For meeting to order at 6:19 or 6:20. Just changing me. Apologize that we're 5 minutes late. We had a little longer configuration meeting, but welcome everybody. It's nice to see people in person, and we have about 25 participants online for board members to know. I wanted to start with a little bit of what I shared at in service. We had our staff had in service yesterday, and it's that tradition of our district to dedicate that first in service day around Martin Luther King Day. We honor his legacy, and it's a tradition to do that service that focuses on issues of humanity and justice. So I want to share that with everybody. So as we start our meeting today too, I would ask us to reflect on that enduring lesson that we learned from Martin Luther King about, in the face of impossible odds, people in this country, people who love this country, and for all of us, our schools, we can help change it. And for us today is approving our budget, right? So we can all move forward and approve our budget to make sure that we ensure best outcomes for our kids. And we also support the hard work of our administrators and the hard work that you board members had put into creating this budget. So I hope that we can focus today in our energy in the lasting consequences that, the decisions that we make or do not make today, the impact that they will have in our kids. So let's try to ground our actions today in our core beliefs, and remember that what we value, we uphold. So that's the basis of our budget. So let's get to work today. So, and a part of that in service too was also talking about economic insecurity, not just in housing, but also in food insecurity. And it was just so wonderful to spend the time with the staff. And I just want to thank the members of the Justice Coalition for helping put that together. I want to thank Jen for helping us put together all of that too. So it was, I think, I don't know what the survey will say, but I think it was a great time spent with everybody, and it meant a lot. And hopefully we can all be a little kinder to each other today. So let's get started with the board meeting. Any adjustments to the agenda? Public comments. Please raise your hand. We're gonna have a community, the ability for community members to ask questions. So we will have a Q&A after our review of the budget. So if your question or your input is about the budget, you can hold your comment. But if you have something that you see further down the agenda or that you don't see reflected in the agenda, you want to comment right now, please raise your hand, whether you're online or in person. I want to make sure that everybody online can hear me. We have Spencer with us today. Okay, I don't see any hands. Spencer, do you see any that I'm not seeing? Okay, so then we're gonna move right into our final budget presentation.
Great, thank you very much. I just also want to point out you have a board member online as well, just as a reminder.
Yeah.
All right. So thank you, everybody, for being here tonight. We have had a pretty lengthy process around budgeting, and I just really want to thank both the team, the central office team, for their hard work, our principals, everybody has, and the schools. They've been engaged in this process for several months now, and we asked people to look at the budget a little bit differently as we put it together this time. And so I just really want to thank the hard work that's gone into it and praise that as well. The presentation, we're not going to go through a super lengthy presentation. We've been over several different aspects of our budget, but this is the meeting at which we vote on a budget to warn to our voters. And so this is where we are in the timeline. We're January 22nd, final FY26 budget warrant. So a big day for us. And so our mission statement is to nurture and inspire in all students that passion, creativity, and power to contribute to their local and global communities. And our budgeting process used our core beliefs, which we've talked about before. And our goals of our strategic plan is some of the foundational work for how we budgeted. And then we also really worked this year to try to develop a funding system that provides for equity. And that was a process by which we set kind of a base amount for how much we would allocate towards each school for the students that are in that school, as well as additional funding based upon other needs. So whether that was poverty or multilingual learners, sparsity is another area. So that's how far and wide our kids range. Everybody in our district is in a rural district. And so that counts as part of our needs in all of this. And the board has a commitment to that equity as well through its policies. The goals were to build a budget based on our framework of what are called multi-layered system of supports and the educational quality standards that come from the Agency of Education, and focus our decision-making on programs and services that meet those goals of the strategic plan. So just a reminder on all these, here were the board's budget parameters, remaining under the per pupil spending threshold, developing those multi-layer systems of supports, framing our decisions around the strategic plan core beliefs, and really budget towards long-term financial sustainability in our district. Right? And so this is a big challenge in this day and age. So from our school, we presented all of the school budgets and kind of how those broke down. But what we want to make sure that we reminded is that we allocated resources really around class sizes, the educational quality standards, and the supports needed for kids. And so that was kind of how we broke down those resources. And then this was the impact of that budgeting. So we did ask for and put in the budget decreases in FTEs. In many of these areas, attrition or unfilled positions are going to be the way that we accomplish that. We just wanted to make sure that we outline that overview of our impacts. And then really at this point, once we have this down, we moved into our discussions of what does this look like as an overall picture based upon those needs that each of our schools met with their budgeting process. We've got a total number that we're bringing before you and some of those tax rate projections. And so I'm going to turn this over to Suzanne to explain a little bit about where we fell in all of this area.
Thank you. Expenses for this budget are at $43,225,002. Revenue $7,021,150 for a net ed spending of $36,203,852. This is an increase over draft number two of $195,458, which is due to an increase in the tech center tuition and a decrease in our announced tuition at U32. Also some horizontal movement in our teachers that we received after that December date. And so all of those salary increases have been included in this draft. The final LTW ADM is 2,370.68, which is actually an increase of 96.5 over the previous estimates that I had included in the tax rates. The spending per pupil is 15,272, which is a 6.2% increase over last year. These amounts, the 15,272 and the 6.2%, are included in the warning along with the total expenditures. The equalized tax rate would have been 1.2856, which is an 11.56 reduction from last year. After the 72% statewide adjustment is applied to the yield and the offsetting adjustment to the CLA, the equalized tax rate is 1.7855, which is about 6 cents less than draft 2 projections, decreasing mainly because of the increase in the long-term weighted ADM over the estimates.
Yeah, I think so. Just to point out, the estimates we've been giving you, we've been as conservative as possible, but these numbers came more and they solidified as we got to this point in time. So those were very favorable to us in many ways.
The official CLAs received from the property and valuation review in January were all 1 or 2 percentage points less than the preliminary state projections, which means slightly higher tax rates than would have been with the tax department's preliminary estimates. The CLA changes range from a drop of 4.91% in Berlin to a decrease of 20.50% in Worcester. The estimated tax rates for each town are in column 3 of this table. So you see the towns, then the statewide adjustment for FY26, and then the estimated tax rates. When compared to last year's individual town rates, Berlin and Middlesex will see decreases. East Montpelier, Calais, and Worcester will have increases that range between 1.49% and 19.98%. The tax rate estimates are using the projected property yield from the tax commissioner, which could change based on legislative action. Column 1 of this slide reflects, oh, whoops, next one.
Yeah, I just want to say, so just reinforce the property yield is not set until well after the vote on this. And so we're basing that on the current information.
Column 1 of this slide reflects the tax amount for a $100,000 home this current year. Column 2 is the estimate for next fiscal year. Column 3 is the dollar value change on a $100,000 home. Columns 4 and 5 illustrate the change on a $200,000 and $300,000 home. For households paying based on income, the per pupil spending is divided by the income yield, then multiplied by the projected statewide income yield to get the district income rate. So with our per pupil spending of $15,272, we divide that by 12,260, which is currently a projected income yield that was included in the tax commissioner's letter. That is also set by the legislature. And multiplied by 2%, the district income rate would be 2.49%. This is 0.35% less than the 2.84% district income rate for FY25.
Can you say that last piece again?
This is 0.35% less than the 2.84% district income rate for FY25, the current year. So there's a little bit more on the next slide about household income. Under current law, a household that is eligible to pay taxes on income will receive a credit on their FY26 bill for the amount that their education property taxes in FY26 exceeds 2.49% of their income. So that percentage rate from the previous slide, that's the most that they will have to pay the percentage of their income. If their property tax bill is higher than that, they will receive a credit on their tax bill. Certain limitations do apply, including maximum allowed house site value. Again, the credit will show up on the education taxes portion of the bill with the label education state payment. We do encourage taxpayers to utilize the property tax credit calculator on the Department of Taxes website. Currently, it's with the 2025 property tax credit information. I believe that they will update that soon. There are ways to tweak it to tell it the 26 information too, but and on the tax department's website, there is guidance on how to file for a property tax credit claim, and we've put both of those links in this slideshow, and the slideshow is already available on our website. If you go to our website and find the budget info memo, you'll find this, and you can click on those links there. What questions do you all have?
Well, I think we're gonna do community questions.
Yeah, so we were gonna open it to the community first and then have board members ask questions.
Sure.
So, okay, so community members, if you could raise your hand, whether you're online or, and when you raise your hand, please say your name and where you're from. You're gonna get a mic.
You're gonna get yours.
Hi, Hannah Brown. I'm from Middlesex. Can you walk me through what I saw in nursing? It says minus 0.4 FTE for nursing at Rumney. Can you just tell me what that's going to look like in practically at school?
Yes, so
Right now they have 1.0 and it's going down to 0.6.
going down to 0.6. So the reduction in nursing will be to 0.6, which is 3 days a week. And that's based upon the number of students that are served in that school. That's how we came up with those numbers. Go ahead.
So my question is, on those 2 days where we don't have a nurse, what the plan is. The plan this year, I mean, I spoke in front of the board about my experience with nursing.
Yes.
Clearly did not work. Bonnie is amazing and talked to me about her nursing delegates, but that system fell apart.
Right.
So I don't know what the plan is.
Yeah, so we were very fortunate. We just hired a nurse at Callis who has extensive training and credentials. And I'll get those wrong if I try to tell you what they are, but we've also, so we've got some additional knowledge in the system now. And what I've asked of them is in March to collect data on how we're doing our programs. What kind of issues are they dealing with during this time? What are some of the emergent services that are needed? And then we're going to work together after we collect that data in April and May to make sure that we have a model for service delivery. Here's the needs that we have in our district. Here's how we can cover those on days where we may not have a nurse at a school. Who is the contact? And we want a nurse contact for that as well as delegates for it. And so our goal is collect the data in March, April and May, put together the plan for how nursing will look and be able by the end of May to be able to say next year, here's what nursing will look like and the services will look like across our district so that our students have access as much as possible and at least access to a nurse for consulting if not. And so we do realize that this is, it's not optimal. If our schools were a little larger, it'd be easier to have full-time nursing, but not being able to do that right now, we're going to make sure that we have a system that maybe it is some telehealth, maybe it is just a phone call. We're not sure exactly. The nurses will kind of put that model together. But thank you.
I would just add it. You said the point.
Can you use the mic? Use the mic to it. Sorry.
The 0.6 is an FTE, so that's saying 3, it's the equivalent of 3 full workdays, right? So it's really easy to say, oh, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, like in your head, right? You go, it's Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I have a nurse, Monday, Friday, I don't. There could be a mythical person that's like, I'm willing to work whatever those hours. I'm willing to work 9 to 2 every day, 5 days a week. So they do exist, people like that do exist. So potentially there could still be a nurse there 5 days a week.
Any other questions or clarifying questions from community members? I don't see any hands online unless I'm missing something. Oh, nice job, you guys. And then we're going to move now to board member questions. Go ahead.
Well, I was just wondering if we could make it a practice of reading into the record what the number of participants online are so that.
Oh,
in
I
the-
did
we
do
in the
that when
room
we
are
started
all-
the meeting.
Oh,
I said
was-
that
I was
we
eating.
had 25, sorry. I did it right at the beginning because that was a
Okay.
suggestion before. So I said,
Oh, great.
for board members to know, we have 25. It has moved now to 28 because it
Great.
moves. I got to say that we have one board member, Michelle, online. And then we have, I have not separated who are, because we have, the Zoom host, the director of technology, myself, Stephen, and
But is
a
it
lot of
possible to have this
administrators.
changed?
So we could, I'm sharing them here, I'm not sure,
Yeah.
do you mind putting the chat? It just removes the chat visible, so just click on the
Well,
chat
I'd like
in
to see
your
the
screen.
No,
No, you wanna
she wants to
see
see
the
the
people.
grid.
Yeah, she wants to see the, the grid.
The
Yeah,
view.
I would like to see the grid.
Oh, I think most people are not
That's it.
on.
Yeah, but that's as long as I
Just, she
can.
knows how many.
I mean, I can see us here. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
Other questions?
I have a question. Stephen, are you able to say in reference to the chart on page 63, the overview of impacts, staffing impacts, which of the cuts are due to attrition?
So
Or not?
we're still going through some of that because
Okay.
we've also, so attrition in this case is somebody that would leave a position just normally or retire from that position. So we're actually getting a couple of retirements that that people have told us about. So that's the kind of attrition. We don't necessarily always know those retirements this early,
Mhm.
but we also have unfilled positions and we also have 1-year contracts with some positions as well. And so once we put all of those together, that'll tell us the total numbers of reduction in force, which I will say our earliest indication, it's fairly limited because we have several open positions and several of the 1-year positions. as well.
Right now, do you know which of those positions that will be affected or not?
I think the teaching position is the one area where we would have to issue a RIF based upon the classroom teachers, interventionists and all of that. But we're not looking at, right now, our early indication is not more than 2. And that's not knowing any retirements around that area.
Thank you.
The others, I will say that in nursing and in some of the other areas, where our numbers are pretty close to where we will be next year. Our current staffing looks very similar to what we propose for next year,
Thanks.
would be the right way to say it. Won't be exact.
Yep.
Go ahead.
Food service worker too.
Oh, there you go. Thanks.
Okay, so Lay and then Patrick.
So because I'm not very well immersed into it, this is a question for Suzanne. I think. Would be why is Worcester's CLA down 20.5%, but the estimated property tax total would be going up 19.98%, just because I'm not well.
Yeah.
in numbers.
I'll answer part of that and then I'm gonna let Zach answer
Yeah,
because
because-
he's really good at answering it. The reason that the tax rate goes up is because the CLA going down actually drives it up. So when a CLA drops, that's gonna drive tax rates up. And then Zach can handle the why of CLA going down.
Yeah, so basically, I mean, what the CLA is it's a measure of how far is the actual price that homes sell for different from what is on the books as the appraised value. Because as we do appraisals at different times, you could end up with people paying significantly more taxes on a home valued the exact same amount if you didn't account for the fact that everyone's home price has gone up, one town is appraised, the other one hasn't. To your specific question, just on the mechanics of why does it go, and so that's what happened. One of the things that happened in Worcester, there's a study that's done every year looking at a 3-year lag.
Yeah.
There was a very significant difference in which properties dropped out of the CL of that calculation specific to Worcester. And I think partly because there was one very large property that dropped out, and in a town so small that created a really big difference. In terms of that question about just why does the drop in the CLA equate to an increase in the property taxes? That's honestly the way they've chosen to run the calculation. They calculate it so that you divide rather than multiply, which is I would argue it'd be less confusing the other way, but division is just multiplication by an inverse. And so it's not, that's just a design decision of how they do it, which unfortunately makes it more confusing than it needs to be.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, math lessons and budget.
Yeah. And even though like we have an adjustment on the CLA because that was one thing that the state tried to address, it's still not, it doesn't, even though it tries to level it, it doesn't it doesn't do all its work because you have districts like ours, right? That is 5 different communities. So any other questions from board? Oh, yeah, Patrick, sorry. Yeah, you were
Yes,
next.
when we started talking about the budget
Yeah.
this time around, we talked about the percentage change based on last year's numbers and how close we were to the what the state has decided is the maximum change. And what, I didn't see that on the slides. What's the like big picture percent change and where are we we're up against the state limit?
Sure, that's slide 66 is what the page number shows. Or actually, there's no page number, but it's after page 65. So your percentages are in there, and if you're talking about the percentage increase per pupil, it's 6.2%. And so there's a couple different things, Patrick, so I'm gonna lead you down this path.
Yep.
In the middle of the blue box, it says local education spending per LTW ADM determines the tax rate. An estimated excess spending threshold is 37,755,449 because the state has determined that ceiling should be 15,926 per LTW ADM. So you take that 15,926, multiply it by our LTW ADM, and that's where we get that $37 million number.
Okay.
That's our ceiling. So if we go over that, then we're gonna be taxed twice for every dollar that we go over that. Does that answer that question, or you also want the percentage of the budget?
And then is that the 6.2?
Yeah.
Because I remember that the number being like 13 or
That's
something.
That 6.2 is the per pupil. So if we go to the slide before, expenses are going up 3.75%, revenues are going down 6.16%. So the net ed spending is going up 5.92%. And yes, our baseline budget was, I think, an increase in the 12%, and that's where that $2.5 million cut helped us out a lot.
Okay. So we're in good shape to the state.
Yeah.
And
We're under the excess spending threshold, yep.
thank you.
Sorry, the baseline budget was, it's just a good.
It was around 12%. I can look it up if you want, but it was
Around this
12
time.
something.
Daniel and then Diane. Patrick, you're not done?
Another question, different topic. So if you want to go ahead,
Okay.
Chris, I'll come in.
Oh, I was gonna ask about the services we're now shifting to centralized management, thinking about community connections and food service. And I was wondering if we're projecting any savings. I mean, I see reasons for equity and consistency and efficiency generally in centralizing those services. Are we projecting any savings though in this budget from doing that?
I would say we didn't shift those. Those have been centralized services. We were just clear on that those like community connections was a district-wide service. Food service was a district-wide. We didn't shift anything between, I can't think of anything we shifted between.
The only thing I would say, Daniel, is I do think we will reap benefits from the food service consolidation and the purchasing centralization. That's not in this budget because I wasn't really sure how to budget for that. We did hire the food service director and he starts next week actually. So we're really excited about that work. Have a local foods incentive grant that we were just awarded, and that's gonna help us with our baseline year. And the more we purchase local foods, we're eligible for future year grants on that. Really hopeful for what he can do in helping us build that program. So there's a lot of opportunity that I do think is coming our way with food service centralization for purchasing. I think it's also going to support the schools in the way that they need to be supported for their menu preparation, their meal planning, their paperwork completion, making sure that they're meeting the regs and the training and all of the stuff that has to be done. So there's a lot of great things that are coming with that position.
Great, thank you.
And Danny, I would just follow up on the community connections. We had talked about the enterprise fund balances as well, which community connections showed some money there. I think that that's our opportunity to do some planning now that we're getting through the budget process of what do we want to do with our community connections program long term. You know, these are kind of intersecting conversations between configurations and services and programming and budgets, and so we're trying to get each one of those taken care of in turn.
So we'll ask you about that again soon.
Yeah, hopefully not next week, but yeah.
I see you, Chris, but I said Diane and then you can go.
So, just two questions. Well, one is about, thank you for those links to the income sensitivity calculator and that. It's my hope that we really spread that word out there and that we also make ourselves available that should families or residents not be able to access that there are ways to do that. I remember in the configuration committee several months ago, when we were looking at that, there were a huge number. I think 50% of Berlin is at an income sensitivity rate. And I think it's critical, regardless of whether we pass our budget, it's critical for our residents to know what the real impact is. So thank you for putting those out. And then any way we can help families and residents to access that. The other question I have, and it's connected to really how do we monitor the impacts similar of our budget. So we're making choices now based on what we know and what our real context is now. Come the fall, I wonder as a board, how do we monitor what those impacts are and those ripples are? And if additional needs have shown up, that perhaps there are some more health needs that are occurring in our buildings. So we actually need to look at that. There's been more revenue that's come in. So we need to look at where does it make sense? So I just wonder where our process is for monitoring that and getting feedback as to changing things.
Yeah, I think ed quality is one of the first places that we look to see what are the results that we're seeing in our student outcomes. And then I think that there are areas, and this is why I would go back to the nursing pieces, collecting common data across all of our schools so that we can then see, okay, what are those needs? What are we missing? You know, as we just talk about this anecdotally sometimes, but what are we missing in a deeper level? And then we can come back and we can review those a couple of times a year and say, okay, what are we seeing in the schools? What kind of use are we seeing? What kind of additional services? Or are we over-serving in some cases? I don't want to say that it's one way or the other, but just say that we should be looking at those data points a couple of times a year. And I think another one, and we'll talk about this a little later, transportation is one of those areas now. It's becoming much more complicated and it's changing much more often than it has ever in the past. I think having a couple of updates a year on where we are and what we're doing, first to the committee and then to the full board is going to be important for you as a board to stay informed about those topics. And I think just trying to get a better cycle of what data are we collecting and how are we presenting it. We're getting there. I mean, ed quality is doing a great job of getting on a regular schedule now, and that really helps us all.
Yeah, but I'm not sure that as part of that process, we talk about implications as a board, but sitting on that committee when we ask those questions, similarly, I've had those questions about AP and what's its impact on our budget and what's the bang for the buck. But I don't really feel that there's a place on that committee for me to say, okay, let's line it up and what's our budget implications. So yeah, I see where you're saying outcomes and judging that, absolutely. There's so much task to that committee that I'm not always sure which road we're taking to.
I think you bring up a good point. And I would just say, I'm not sure exactly how, but I hear in the question of how do we tie, we've spent this much money on interventions or AP or whatever those things are, and what are the results that we're seeing? And are those the results we expect? And those are the results that we want? And that can give us an idea. I really hesitate to use a term that gets thrown around in education sometimes, the return on investment in those areas, because that never gets us into a good conversation. But it's that idea of, okay, where are we spending our money and what are the results that we're getting from that? And so I think just tying those things together between ed quality, finance, and some of the other committees is the right way for us to do that.
Chris and then Daniel.
I was going to Suzanne, what does buying local mean when you're talking about the grant?
Well, that's what I'm
Right.
hoping the food service
Services
director is
can
gonna help
tell
with.
us.
But
Oh, okay.
No, I do
But
think
it's
that
usually,
we have a lot of
yes,
vendors that deliver locally. There's various organizations that work directly with farmers and we can order from them and get the stuff here. Sometimes just ordering our milk is local. So it's developing a tracking system too. Right now, we don't have a good way to track what is local in our purchases. I'm really excited that he's coming on board.
Okay,
And
thank
it's
you.
usually a 60-mile radius, just
Is
so
it-
that's helpful.
Does
Yeah.
that mean growth in manufacture or distribution? So it could come
I don't know.
outside of.
I don't
that's-
know. I don't know.
I'll find out. and let
Thank
you
you.
know.
That's true.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Daniel.
I just wanted to add to what Diane said, because I agree, and I heard sort of two pieces. I heard
Yes.
like cost efficacy of like the actual teaching on the one hand, and then I heard general monitoring of it's not a good word for it, but operations, like, or wraparound services, because we don't just teach students, we feed them, we transport them, and so on and so forth. And we don't have a good structure for really either of those. You have the finance committee talking about money over here, and you have the ed quality committee talking about ed quality over here, but it's not, they're not matched or overlaid in the right way. And also, we just don't have an operations monitoring committee either, or something like that. So that's probably something is on us, right, to
So,
fix.
yeah, and I just want to sort of, because that's a little bit of a tricky word, right? Just because we don't run the schools, we make
No.
sure that so it's asking for the right reports back from them. So that's what I'm hearing from them. So for example, what I was hearing in your second part is like, what if the needs change, whether it's nurses or we get more kindergartners? That happens all the time. The superintendent has the ability to address that without having to come back to a board meeting, right? Like they do that daily. So it's how we report it back to the board. There are things that we need to authorize if we were gonna, suddenly add new positions. You've been on the board for a little while, but go ahead.
I would say it's kind of a two-phase. So if additional needs show up, which they always do, we first look to cover those in the general fund. So there are usually ways we can move some monies around depending on open positions or things like that to meet those needs. When we can't meet those needs, and this is the risks that we take in the budget that we have, is if a large enough need comes in that we don't have general funds to cover that, that's where we come to the board around the fund balance and say that, okay, we've got this need, we're going to need to do that. And that's our insurance against something bankrupting us, although it's never that far out, but it's just a way for us to look at that. We would report to you like, hey, we had to add a kindergarten class, or there was a change in nursing needs. Those are regular updates that we would do through our COLT report.
Okay, all right. Patrick?
Mine's just a clarification is which, when we talk about the layers of services, where's transportation and nursing and food service in those layers?
When we talk about where they're located in terms of, so nursing
scheme.
services would be a school-based service. Transportation is a district service, food service is a district service. When we think about those centralized services.
No, I'm sorry, I meant like when you talk about layers 1 through 4.
Oh, yeah, okay. So the base layer, right, is we really use ed quality standards to talk about that. And so for school nursing, there's a couple of different ways you can look at it, but the Association of School Nurses has a general 500 students to 1 nurse formula. We have class sizes that we have in our class size policy that we follow. Food service isn't really covered under any of those pieces, but it's, in fact, I would say that it's not really a layer service, it's a service that we have to provide.
Okay.
So when we talk about the multi-layer system of supports,
Yeah.
when we talk about regular classroom instruction and supports for kids is layer 1 and 2.
Yep.
And once you get to layers 3, 4, there's actually 5 and 6. We haven't really talked about those, in depth, but layers 3 and 4 are intervention services. They could be some enrichment kinds of activities and things like that. I would say like music and art and all of that. We consider that a part of our layer 1 and 2.
Yeah.
It's when we expand services for interventions for students in need. And then when we talk about special education services for students, that's really layers 5 and 6 when we start getting into those layers. So they're more intensified, specialized services that we provide for some students.
But the nursing and food service and transportation are is like a 0.
Nursing is a layer 1 and
Is a
2.
layer 1, okay.
But I would actually say that we have in some of our elementary schools additional needs. We have kids who have needs that are beyond what we would say our base layer is. And those schools have full-time school nurses as a result.
Okay.
And so that would be kind of considered that layer 3 and 4 kind of services for those students.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And I think sometimes we have a hard time explaining what we mean by those layers of service. And that's something that we can continue to help educate the board and the community on. So thank you.
Lay?
I do just have one more question to Suzanne is what is the I lost it. What was the decrease of 6.1 something percent in the revenues category for the year total?
The revenues are decreasing from last year by
Yeah.
$460,000,
Mhm.
which is 6.16%. That is primarily due to the decrease in the use of the fund balance. So last year, as of revenue, we used, I think, about $435,000 in fund balance. And we aren't using that in this budget. So from the very beginning, we had to make up that money, sort of. 485, 291 is what we're making up out of fund balance use. Does that answer?
Any other questions from board members? Okay, go ahead, Keely.
I'm wondering if you can talk, you talked a little bit about the nursing, and I just know that there's been a lot of community member questions about library, media, and tech, and so I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about our ability to cover those areas at all of the schools, and particularly talk about how tech fits in, because I think we've heard clearly those are different.
Yeah, actually, so we have library media and we have tech integrationists. We have kind of blurred the lines between those in our conversations over the last couple of years. I would say that we haven't done and we don't have a clear distinction of what those are. That's part of our work as we move past budget season as well. But for library services, all of our students at the elementary school will receive the same level of library services next year that they've received this year. There is a slight decrease in the FTEs because we have fewer classrooms next year at the elementary school. And so, so they'll still have those. They will not necessarily have additional services in the library. So in some spaces, they'll have their regular classroom time, but there won't be a librarian necessarily there for them to go at any time during the day. And I would just say that this is probably a bigger conversation about what does library look like at the elementary school, so that you have a good picture of that. It's not that kids just leave class to go get a book. Sometimes it's that the class goes there. This is definitely an area where we have I would say the minimal level of services for most of our students, but it's the same amount of services. Should we want to expand this in the future? That's a real good conversation as we talk about programming for configuration and what would that look like and what is the need for our students. And so I don't know if that fully answers your question.
It does, except for maybe the tech.
Oh, the tech part. So tech integration is, and we have heard from this, and I would say that we've heard from Arlen, who is our champion for this, and I just praise the work that she does. We need to have a better discussion of what that looks like. And one area where we can is we put in, and so we shifted around. One of the positions we added was the IT director instead of having the admin assistant support there. That was what we tried to balance that with. But having an IT director is someone who could work with a district technology team, could work with our tech integrationists. We actually have more than just one certified tech integrationist in the district, but we don't necessarily utilize their services. And so how does that look and how should that look in the district is not something that we've defined well. And so it's an area of work for us.
Chris and then Diane.
Has, in the budget, has the library positions, media positions, also incorporated what we call a tech integrationalist at the school? So they're really looking at both of those positions or skills in that one category.
So as near as I can tell, as we look at this, we combined those at one point in time in our budgeting process, and they're really probably shouldn't be combined. We should be looking at what services do we want for library and what services do we need for tech integrationists within our schools. At some point in time, we kind of merged those and it got blurry. And that's kind of why we're sitting here and I can't say that this isn't what we're doing and this is how it should look, because we stopped really trying to define that at some point in time. It's work that we need to do.
It's more to what do the positions that we are referencing in the budget do tech integration as well as library work.
I'm not sure.
I think what Stephen is trying to say, and from the emails that we have had back and forth with Arlen, and I think she would have told me if I was completely wrong. And there's some of our principals here that could speak to that. Is that we would continue to meet the student needs wherever, whether it's in library or in integration as it is right now. We're just meeting the need. We're not expanding on that right now. The way that we're structure right now, and before they revise all of that, we wouldn't be able to expand on it. But this is, like Stephen was saying, this is an opportunity that lies ahead for all of us as we talk about configuration. But
I think it's fair to say that our budget does not address our needs for instructional coaching and tech integrationists as well as we would like. But we also don't want to just throw it in there without actually having a plan for it. And I think that that's fair to say that those are two areas that we have not given enough consideration to as to how they can support the school system as a whole and our students in particular. And I would hate to just say that let's hire somebody if we don't actually have a plan for how we're going to integrate that work within the schools.
And excuse me,
Diana,
what I was
then
going to
Michael.
add is basically the history as to why it became that, or at least my recollection. And the only reason I bring this up is because it was based on ed quality standards. And so if we are saying that the work and changes we're making now are based on ed quality standards, I think we all know the world has evolved when it comes to technology, and what technology looks like is very different, and the one-to-one whole movement of each child having one computer is long gone. You know what I mean? But I think it would be helpful to revisit what that looks like based on ed quality standards, based on what the evolution of the work is, and based on our understanding. And the reason I say that is because now if we're making decisions based on ed quality standards, when are we going to forget what that was and how that drove our work? And so I think we just have to be mindful, if this is our North Star now, it was our North Star then. And so that's got to feel frustrating because we haven't clearly explained it, because it's gotten its water over the dam.
Michaela?
I just wanted to confirm that I heard correctly, though, that what you're saying is the amount of library and tech services is the same at each elementary school in this current budget. Because I feel like
I'm
we've heard
like looking
otherwise.
at the administrator.
Well, by the same as the services are equitable, there's not the same amount of time at each school, but there's the same amount of time for each kid. I think is the right way to say it. I'm looking at my principals. Yeah, it's just because of the different number of classes at each of the elementary schools that you might have a larger FTE. But the students should be receiving, from a student standpoint, they should be receiving a pretty equitable distribution.
And is that true to the teacher standpoint and how they're supported by the librarians? Looks different.
Yeah, and that some of that is also the skill set of the individual librarians as well.
We have a lot of new librarians.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, a lot of it is just growth, normal growth.
And something that Stephen said was that we have tech integrationists in the district that we aren't utilizing in that way necessarily. And so there is an opportunity to take a look at some of that. We have a couple at the high school and one at the elementary school. So there are folks that can possibly join a team for us to do some planning, so.
And that is part of the budget.
Yeah, those positions.
Yeah,
Yes,
those
those
positions
Are in the,
different
yeah, that's what it just.
I mean, they're not working as tech integrationists, they're working in some other position.
Correct.
Okay.
Right now.
Daniel?
Are these, I guess I'd like to extend the question to health education? And is the access to health education equal per pupil across our schools with this budget? And do we have a plan to create a district policy around that, if not?
Oh, gosh, that's a whole lot. So I would have to look at the,
Can you use the mic, Alicia? Sorry,
Yeah.
for the, Spencer, can you, just because the people online are, thank you. Okay. Oh, and Caroline. Okay, thank you.
To answer that question, yes, this budget reflects equitable services in health across all of the schools.
Caroline has
How
her
it's
hand up,
delivered
so
may look a little
That,
different.
how it is
Yeah,
going
so-
to be delivered has not been determined yet.
Yeah.
We had a vacancy in health this year that we were not able to fill. So the current state is, it is not equitable across all buildings, nor has it been in all my years here. This budget and last year's budget has at least equitable services. Similar to library and tech, we need to have the right licensed people at the table and creative minds to figure out what that will look like. With the new memo that we got, it can look different, and some of our schools have done service delivery models in different ways, looking at classroom teachers and nurses and all of that. But the amount of FTEs will be equitable in each building.
Thank you, Alicia.
Yeah, and to the policy question, and Caroline will get to you.
Caroline, yeah.
Yeah, is the policy side of that is the wellness policy, which includes health education, is up for a review.
I review.
And so then the state has offered new information on that. We need a wellness committee. There's a whole lot to it that we're working on. Yeah.
Caroline, do you want to unmute? Did you-
Yes, so Alicia answered it in more detail. On top of what she said, I would just add, it also, so the budget does have equitable services at each of the schools, but it has in the past come down to hiring and who we get for applicants. And so all of our schools have seen some amount of impact in one area or another based on the workforce and the candidates that we get that are applying. And that's where some of, at least at the elementary level, some of the inequities come from, is that lack of being able to hire someone for the position. That's the one reason that health this year was not equitable across the schools. And same thing for tech. When we posted this summer for library tech, the applicants that we got that filled that position were interested in the library and held the licensure for library. And so I think the budget reflects an equity that we have not necessarily seen based on who applies. Does that make sense?
Thank you. Thank you,
Yeah,
Caroline.
thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna move on to, oh, go ahead, and because we'll have opportunity.
Okay,
go
so we
ahead.
talked about this last meeting or maybe the meeting before, but there's a reduction of a classroom teacher, and that wasn't decided, and that, you know, it was clear that that wasn't going to be announced. But I'm curious about the procedure for determining that. Is it based off of, and maybe this was answered already, but is it based off of longevity? Is it based off of classroom size, enrollment, or what is?
So the actual choice of where do we do the reduction is
Yeah.
really enrollment based.
It's enrollment based.
So now what teacher is actually affected by that is determined by the contract. And so the contract language outlines how we do reductions if necessary. I would say that for the most part, these positions will be, it'll be attrition that creates the opening. In some cases, we may need to, somebody may need to voluntarily transfer from school to school based on enrollment numbers to maintain those positions. It can get a little complicated, but I would just say that it starts with enrollment is what drives the decision. So if we have one less classroom at an elementary school, or if we have lower enrollment in courses here at U32, those are the kinds of things that drive the cuts in those classroom teacher positions.
So this one is specifically at U32.
Yes.
And is it in, I guess, yeah, it's hard to know because the contracts are different, but if somebody's, if is there sort of like people are they're grandfathered. I don't know if if they've been here longer than.
Seniority is certainly part of the
Seniority,
contractual
yeah, that's
language.
the word.
Yeah, of how that's determined.
Okay.
But it's also based upon licensure as well, depending on where the need
Okay.
is not, I guess would be the right, so where we don't have a need for a class
That makes sense. Thank
or
you.
classes. Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna move us into our reports because we would get to still talk a little bit about budget when we're approving the budget in our action steps. So Superintendent Central Office and Leadership Team call report. We have some celebrations.
Yes, yes. So we want to make sure that we celebrate two of our people. In fact, we've been talking about one of them. Arlen at East Montpelier Elementary School was the winner of the Rosen Publishing Northern New England School Librarian of the Month for January 2025. Yes, so big congratulations. I don't know if Arlen's out there, but I hope she hears this.
Yeah.
When I talked to her, I think it was last week when I talked to her, she's the one award that she is going for at this point is the Lifetime Achievement Award. And so we want to support her in that as well. And so she's done a great job for us. We really appreciate that. And the other one is Randy Brown, who's a science teacher here at U32. Many of you probably know who he is. He is one of 5 Vermont educators that is recognized with the Presidential Award for Excellence in Math and Science Teaching, which is a very good award. Yeah.
There has been celebrations at the schools, you know, so, you know, we
Yeah.
wanted to share with you. I was not there, but I've been told that there were celebrations already. So, because we were like, oh, should we have them here? But yeah.
So that was a wonderful thing. And I would just say that that if there are any other questions about the central office leadership team report, that's what we call COLT. If not, we want to highlight a couple of things in the principal's report as well.
I don't see any hands online or here. So let's move to the principal report and
All right.
ahead.
So I've got a couple of folks that are going to highlight some things that are going on.
I'll try not to talk too long. This time I feel like I went on and on last time about the data. But this month I talked a little bit about writing. And at EMES, we try to have an area of focus every year where we really spend a lot of our professional development time together. And so this year it is on writing, pre-K through 6. We had a group of teachers over the summer district-wide create some writing rubrics looking at writing conventions. And so our teachers at East Montpelier used that rubric and also used the East Montpelier Conventions rubric, gave a whole bunch of feedback on it. And we have created a rubric that we're hoping will be able to share with the rest of the district that really looks at writing conventions, kindergarten through grade 6. The curriculum group that met this summer did a really nice job, but they didn't have representation across all grades. And those grades that didn't have teachers there, there were just some missing pieces and some missing work. So we had interventionists, special educators, classroom teachers, all to come together. I wish I could share pictures of this staff meeting. They were working their little tails off to come up with aligned rubrics that really were vertically aligned. So, right, what a kindergartner can do in the fall versus what they can do in the winter versus the spring. And then when they get to 1st grade, all the way up to the end of 6th grade by the time they leave us. I'd be happy to share them with you. It is a lot of blood, sweat. I won't say any tears went into it, but really, and the hope behind all of that is that we can look at student writing across the years and have some sort of a common rubric. We share with you, and this year the focus is on math at the board meetings, but we share with you and we have a lot of data on reading and on math, and we don't have that same data in writing. All the data we have is homegrown and just what teachers collect through their own scoring and all of that. So this is a step in that direction. There's a lot more work to come, but it's exciting.
Thank you, Alicia.
It's always hard to follow Alicia. I'm just gonna say that. One thing I wanted to highlight was district-wide. On Monday, or nope, Tuesday, today's Wednesday. Yesterday, we gathered here at U32, and as Flor said, we were able to watch a movie together called Just Getting By, and it was directed by Bess O'Brien from the Northeast Kingdom, and it was about housing and food insecurity. And then we broke out into small groups and we're able to have discussions to start the day. We watched the movie and then we're able to reflect on its impact on our practice and how that will translate into our building. So that was a really powerful opportunity for us as a community. Personally, it was really hard. There were a lot of people that I know. It was a lot about the community that I grew up in. So it was a great opportunity for us as a district, I think, to examine something that's really prevalent for a lot of us. The other thing I wanted to address or highlight from the principal's report is that Lori Denrenad, my administrative assistant, and Lucia Burke, who is now our custodian, but was behavioral support in our building for a very long time, cooked up this idea and they're like, we're going to do a food drive for the food bank. And Lori's like, do I have your blessing? And I was like, absolutely, go for it. And she has been they've been giving out these extra like little slap bracelets to kids who are bringing in donations. And it's just been really fun for kids to come in and drop food off. That food drive is going to be going on until the 14th of February. So feel free to drop some food off. We also have a list on our website of things that the food bank is looking for right now. Also, another shout out to Lori has also collaborated and has started this after school group. Lori loves to sing and they're singing all these songs and they're going to go over to Chestnut Place and sing right on Valentine's Day after school. So kids are volunteering, Lori's volunteering her time, and it's just really sweet. I love to, I think a lot of our work is just lifting up the beautiful minds of people around you. And that's really prevalent in our building right now. So.
We got one more. Becca's gonna.
Becca, yeah.
Oh, it's Becca.
This on? So this is not in the principal's report because we heard last week that one of the things that I had heard from you all when I first came here and then have a background, and then Stephen and I talked a lot about sort of how we could start to explore some of the community schools model. The foundations grant was reopened through X67, and we were one of 6 recipients as a supervisory union for the next 6 months of funding, and then ongoing work with UVM as a partner organization. And so that allows us to really explore sort of a 3-pronged approach to a community schools model, thinking about rigorous, relevant, community-based curriculum to support inclusion and equity, thinking about how we expand some of the ideas and thinking around comprehensive wellness services to really address some of the out-of-school barriers for young people in our communities. And then third, thinking about comprehensive third space intergenerational multi-school, after school and out-of-school programming that really centers a partnership model. So we're starting, that's really exciting work. It's really close to my heart personally, but also I think to this community. And so that is work we're gonna be able to start and explore and have funding to do that. And you'll hear more about that as we keep going, but I wanna thank Flora and Stephen for supporting that in the work that they do, and also all of you for lifting that up as something that may help to sustain our community in deep and meaningful ways.
Thank you, Becca.
Yeah.
Yeah. With all of that, it's exciting. Thank you, Alicia. Thank you, Celia, and thank you, Becca. Stephen and I have started to try to get some highlights because we don't always have questions. So that's the way of getting some highlights for all board members. Now we're going to move into the best part of the meeting, and both our students are here. And they had busy schedules today and they ran over here, and here they are. So I'm Linnea, and they take it away.
Yeah, sure.
All right, so we'll start out. This is J term week, so I'm not in the school building, but my sister is. She's been telling you all about it. So J term is just, well, I think Lane might do a better job describing it, but I have done it in previous years, and there's a lot of cool options. I know my sister and her friends are going skiing. There's cooking classes. I went and volunteered at EMES when I was doing it, and it's just really cool opportunity to get out in the community or just try new things. So that's the first thing. And then
Yes, I guess as a like a summary to what J term really is, it's a bunch of like individualized courses that students that we chose as students. So you have a whole list and you were ranking your like 1 to 3 or like certain things like skiing and volunteering took up 3 or 2 sessions, stuff like that. And then the people work their magic to get a nice schedule that we still are baffled with and how they can do that. But they do that and we get to do a lot of fun things. There's a lot of active activities. There's some library activities that people do, cooking classes, as Linnea said. So it's just a really nice, fun time, especially where they placed it this year in between the semesters. So we get a nice slow start to our second semester, which starts on Monday. Yeah.
I have, oh yeah, sorry. I'm just gonna bring it a little closer. I have a few friends in AP Bio and AP Calculus. And they had to go in to do that today. So there's also that if you're taking AP classes, but yeah, it's crazy. I'm glad I'm not doing that. But do you want me to go over sports stuff or first?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. So U32, our alpine ski team hosted a race, which is super exciting because it hasn't happened in a long time. We're middle of the sports season. We have a lot of athletes killing it right now. Shout out Hannah Drury. She's up for athlete of the week, so go vote for her if you haven't already. Basketball is killing it.
Yeah,
So
get it
is
close.
hockey, sorry.
There you go. Now we can hear it.
Okay. Well, yeah. Okay, I'm done. That's it. Right, let's talk to the microphone. Okay. Do you want to go over Hadestown?
Okay, so yeah, so Hadestown, this was a question that was brought up about 2 meetings ago, so 4 weeks ago from Zach, about just kind of a summary of what is going on. So I sent out an email to some people, and so there are some, oh, I'm missing one of them. Okay, but so an unnamed senior from U32 says that in quote, the collaboration is going excellently. It has given myself and many others to the opportunity to meet and collaborate with peers who we normally wouldn't even know. So that's a U32 senior talking about MHS students. And then we have the theater teacher, Erin Galligan Baldwin, saying everything is going pretty well. I will admit that at first, everyone was nervous about the merge, and a lot of people had very strong doubts on whether or not it would work out. We've had a great time collaborating. It's been wonderful. Oh, wait, that's where, okay, sorry. That last sentence I just said was the other student, who's another senior. The weird computer stuff. Okay, so Erin Galligan Baldwin said, we've had a great time collaborating. It's been wonderful for the students to get to know each other. And we have so many adult leaders involved, 2 directors, 2 music directors, 2 costumers, 2 tech directors, 2 choreographers, 2 house managers. It's amazing. And the only hiccups we've had are based on scheduling. We wanted to have 2 in-school performances for students, but MHS students can't couldn't miss school, obviously. It's also been hard for MHS students when they come to U32 because they have much of a bus, they don't have much of a bus system. For U32 kids going to MHS after school, there have been no problems. There's a bus that drops off downtown, so it's perfect. That's quote for theater teacher Erin Galligan Baldwin there.
The last thing we wanted to say is, I know I missed the last meetings, I'm very sorry about that. But we just wanted to bring up also, we've recently experienced a loss in the community, and it's just really important that everyone is getting the support they deserve, and that we still have people recovering from this, and we just want to keep Jack in our thoughts. And to end on a positive note, everybody's doing great. Just deep breath. We're gonna get through this.
I will
I know
say,
budget season can be tough.
I will say also that when we did have one report apparently from MHS right before Christmas, that another student from MHS, and that's a connection to our community as a Central Vermont community. So just remaining with the families of Mr. Bevan and Mr. Dennison as their families are mourning through this time.
Any questions for our students? Thank you, guys. It's so nice to see you both at the meeting. We're gonna move into the careers. Oh,
I don't
sorry.
have a question for the students, but I just wanted to, it's about students. I had the pleasure of attending 4 or 5 pilot exhibitions last week. And I just wanted to give a shout out to those students because they are ridiculously amazing. And the young women that are doing the Her Vermont project have blown my mind. And they're unveiling it at the end of March at the college. They've done this mural. They are looking at history from a women's perspective. They are bringing voices into history that are normally silenced. And I just really want to give a shout out to the students in that pilot program because the work that they're doing is incredible. And I really hope that next year, as many school board members as possible can go in and watch. This is the second year I've gone in. And every time I go in, I just am amazed at the work that the students are putting in.
It's been going on for a few years. I was not able to go, but Amelia, I know you went to some of them. Do you want
Yeah,
to share some of
Yeah,
them?
I was able to go to one as well, and I was also very impressed at the critical thinking, and it's I think it's really empowering to have independent learning in that way, and it's a really powerful program. So it was great to participate and watch. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so now we're gonna move into the Career Center report. We at last meeting, and I'll let you go just right after this. Patrick, at the last meeting, there was a question asked to Jody about, that if in the program of cosmetology, where I think it was you, Natasha, they asked about the textured herd. So Christina reached out, she heard, we sort of said like, we think we do it, but we didn't. So this is what I'm not gonna try to paraphrase. I'm gonna read just a little part of what she said. I wanted to clarify I am a trained and actively teach protective styles and textures hair care to all of my students. Additionally, I feel very strongly about the importance and of those making time to incorporate the pivot point DEBI course into all our lessons. So for several years, they have, sort of make the student, not make the students, but work with the students to understand the history and the cultural significance of all hair textures and styles. And 6 years ago, she intentionally included training on Alicia, who is a 4C texture hair mannequin who's part of, they have several mannequins that don't have names, and at least he's there. So this allows me to teach various, not our lovely Alicia, the other lovely Alicia that sits here as a mannequin. This allows me to teach various techniques such as box braids, cornrows, twists, wigs, extensions, and additionally classes to be a better teacher on those. It's incredibly important for my students to learn about all aspects of hair care in every texture.
Fantastic.
So, and it's just for the community also to know. Patrick, do you have?
Yeah, I just have a couple things to say. The Career Center is working on drafting their annual report right now, and this will be a public facing document that'll have all kinds of things from placement rates and testimonials from graduating students, as well as the numbers of students from each sending school. And just as by way of highlight, U32 sent 45 students, 23, 24, and 60 students, 24, 25. So there's a lot of other information in this report that we're working on edits at the moment, but that's forthcoming. That's all I have for an update.
Thank you, Patrick. And one last thing about the Career Center, that there's a position at large open. We've been trying to find somebody to run for this position as a board member. So if you have any friends that have reached out to you, there's a position open for the Washington Central area. There's 3 positions are large in this board. One of us belongs to our district, the other one to Montpelier, and the other one to Harwood. So our position, Terry, is stepping down. We begged her to stay this year. She is retiring. So there's a position at large in case you guys want to tell your friends. Deadline is the 27th, as a lot of you guys know, and Jody is awesome, and the board is awesome too. Okay, so now moving to the VSBA report, I believe that's the next one. And there, I don't even know where to start, but to just remind you to look at your email that you get every Tuesday. There's a lot going on there. As some of you were here for the configuration committee, the governor just made, told us that he's thinking about 5 school districts and 5 supervisor, 5 central offices. There's a lot coming to us right now. There's going to be a lot of changes. Stephen included in a letter that he forwarded to all the board members some guidance to make sure that we continue to protect all our students, and we continue to work on that. The most important thing is for us to make sure that we continue to educate our students, and that both the staff and the parents have the resources to be informed and know what their rights are. And at our school district, we still have policies in place, and we've continued to uphold the law for all of our students and protect our most vulnerable in our district. And then there was a link in this report again for the survey so that we can better serve you. I would still beg you to do that if you have any time. The last thing that I will share, we were in Vermont Edition this last week trying to get more people to run for the board. We will continue to advocate for all the students in Vermont, and if there's any specific questions about the work, you can always reach out either directly to Sue, to myself, or email Amy. We have a new front person. Carrie had been there for 30 years, and now Amy Callahan is with us, and she's lovely and a great person to, if you guys have any questions. And the last thing is please sign up for any of the webinars. You don't need to watch them that day, but you can watch them later, and the information is sent to you, and the more informed and the more professional development that we do, the better board we can be for all our students. With that, I was going to give us a 5-minute break before we've been sitting for a little while. Yeah, I know. So that we can do the budget stuff in the last few pieces of the meeting. So it is, my math was not good the last time, so maybe we should do 8 or what? Yeah.
8 minutes?
Yeah. I'm looking at
Come
the
back at
math
what
teacher
point?
here.
Be back at 7:45.
Okay. So a question for the board members. Could I read the language on the warning for approving the budget? Then we'll look at the warning, but part of that, and then we would have a motion on the table and then talk about the budget. Does that, okay? Right. So shall the voters of Washington Central Unified Union School District approve the school board to expend $43,225,002, which is the amount the school board has determined to be necessary for ensuring for the ensuing fiscal year, sorry. It is estimated that this proposed budget is approved will result in education spending of $15,272 per equalized pupil. This projected spending per equalized pupil is 6.20% higher than the spending for the current year. Could somebody be willing to do that motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Julia. And
Sorry, Amelia.
and
No, you got it.
second by Amelia.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you both. Discussion. If there's no discussion, we can vote. Well, I don't see any. Oh, Chris.
I'm very supportive of the amount that we are asking our voters to approve. But I'm going to move that we reallocate some of the funding so that we are responding to our community's concerns about nursing and media, library media cuts, which are, it's already pretty tight. And what I'm going to propose is that I'm going to make this specific proposal, that we, at Calais, increase the nursing by 0.3 to 0.5, and that we increase the media at 0.3, so it's a 0.6. And at Doty, that we increase the library media by 0.3, so it's 0.7. And at Rumney, increase the nursing by 0.2, so it's 0.8. And at Rumney, increase the media by 0.4, so it's a 0.8. And I would also propose at the same time, to make sure we're within the budget, that we reduce the board's allocation in the budget by half, so that it would be $38,450 instead of $76,900. And that we reduce the director of grounds personnel at U32, which we had actually done last year as well. And with that, I think we would stay within the parameters that we currently have for our amount. And I understand the pushback may be that we are engaging in meddling, perhaps. But it is also our role, as I heard Floor explained at VPR, is that we reflect the community values. And we have the opportunity to do that as a board. I suspect we don't do that as often as I would like us to, but we do have that authority to do it as a board. And we are representatives of our community. And I think we've heard quite a bit about these reductions in nursing and in the media. And these are, these are very, to me, they're very important and exponential type positions where a little bit goes a long way. And I think it has a ripple effect across our community. So that would be my proposals to amend the budget allocation and ask that if it's voted yes, that allocation be respected. And I also just want to address a little bit because, and I've had not a conversation, but Stan has pointed out that the reduction would be spread across the district by the formula that is currently in place, which is a per pupil formula. I don't think we would necessarily be bound by that because we could direct specific areas that be increased. And yeah, these are not extravagant. They're really tiny and they make the starving just a little bit less hungry, because I don't think we really are meeting the needs that we have across the district. I know our administration is doing the best they can, but I think this would be helpful too. And the board has the prerogative to make this adjustment if we so choose.
So
Thank
Chris,
you.
I just want to clear something out
Yeah.
because I think it would be helpful for the community to know this too. Is that I don't think it's a fair representation to say that the board doesn't usually reflect the will of the community, which is sort of what, you know, we don't do it often enough because that's what we do, you know, by having the core values. And I just want to say that we, you know, by having the parameters and the values that we, you know, not give just ourselves, but the values that our principals and administrators have is reflect the values of the committee and what we care about. And what we have heard, it's, I just want us to make clear that we are listening to all of our constituency, not just to a vocal minority of the people that are coming to our board meetings. So I just want to put that out there because I also want to represent the other people that are not necessarily coming to our meetings. And I'll just say that, but I'll let
So-
others
so
talk.
Let me have an opportunity to respond to that. I don't think I said that we don't reflect the community values. I think we do. But I think sometimes with the budgeting, there are different focuses. And when we hear pretty strongly from the community about nursing and, you know, those are safety issues in the media. And again, these are exponential minor changes. I think it's a 1.5 FTE change out of a 37 or a, what was it, a $43 million budget. And so it's a tiny adjustment that I think will have exponential effects. And, you know, we do reflect the values, but this is value in action. And you quoted Martin Luther King before. And I think Martin Luther King would support this minor change that has very direct impact on students in our community. So I don't have his
I'm
voice.
gonna let
but-
others talk if they're, you know, willing to. We have a motion on the table and that's part of, you know, that's part
Motion
of
to
your
amend.
input. And yeah, so it's.
Do I need a second before discussion?
Second, then Kelly.
Do we need a second?
But we're not discussing your amendment. We have a motion right now on the table.
Okay.
You haven't, you know,
Okay.
so let's leave an opportunity for people to talk about, we put a motion on the table to discuss the budget.
Yeah.
And like give them an opportunity to have it. Zach or Kelly, I don't know which one was first.
So this is a
Zach.
question for Chris in response. We know this is not, the proposed cuts are not new. There's been plenty of time to bring this up to propose a change. We're at a point now we need to make a snap decision. Given this the first time that we've heard this proposal to, not just to add money back in, but to cut a specific position. What's the expertise or sort of what is it that you're bringing to the table that you know that the rest of us don't? That says, oh, this is why we should overrule the administration's position.
So you talk about it as in overruling as opposed to in partnership with, and the expertise. I don't run a school, you don't run a school, but we have a duty to our constituents who have elected us to represent their interests. The administrators weren't elected, we picked them certainly, but we are also able to direct things that we want. Zach is like going to a doctor. Doctor, you can go to the doctor's the expert, and he can say, Zach, I want you to do this. And Zach can say, that's nice, but I don't think I want to do that. I think I'm going to go this other direction. And you have every opportunity and right to do that. This board has the right to do what I'm proposing to do. We're not, I mean, otherwise, why do we have all of these hearings? Why do we have all these community meetings if we are just going to rubber stamp what the administration does? Why don't we just dispense with that? Because you're basically saying we shouldn't do anything different than what the administration is proposing.
So what I'm asking actually is, So tell me why, why is it that we don't need the grounds position?
The what?
The grounds
You,
position.
you've suggested cutting a position.
I
want to
did,
know why.
absolutely did.
Why?
Because if I'm gonna, and you're right, I'm doing weighing balance in here. I'm gonna weigh nursing services and library media services that we heard are exponential in their effect for students versus a groundskeeper. Yeah, I'm gonna go with that because those types of policy decisions are being made by the administration, right? They're only making different ones. Their policy decisions, we need a groundskeeper more than we do, or director of groundskeeper, more than we do more nursing. And the other thing that is kind of, under the radar here that we don't talk about is that the cuts that are being proposed impact our smaller schools most at Doty and Callis. And those are the ones that are, they came into our union with no debt. And so the rest of us are servicing a lot of debt that the other schools brought in. And these are the folks, I think, who unfortunately bear the burden of being cut. So there is this undercurrent that we don't talk about that, that is pretty inequitable if we think about it.
We had Akili and then Ursula.
I feel like we just heard a lot about how the administrators worked to make sure that there were equal services, equitable services in each of the schools. But you didn't seem, are your new arrangements based on that? Because I heard you add more to some schools and less to other schools, none to some schools. And I don't want this, and I agree with Zach, this is very last minute, Chris. I don't want this to throw off all of the work that the administrators have been doing to ensure that there is equitable access to services, because we decide at the last minute that we should arbitrarily add FTE time to some schools and not to others.
It may seem arbitrary, but I was just going through and it seemed like Callis at a 0.2 for nursing. That almost seems cruel. I think you'd better off saying no nursing, because 0.2 for a school, I mean, that just, so I was trying to, make a balance, certainly was doing that. And I did bring up that I favored at the finance committee, I brought up that I favored the number, but not the allocation. I wasn't specific there, but so this isn't the first time that at least the finance committee has heard about concern about the allocation. So, thank you.
Ursula.
And as I said at the finance committee, when you brought up the idea of reallocating the funds, is that we would be doing this blindly. Our schools were given an equitable distribution of funds, which we sought very hard to do. And the principals were asked how they would allocate them to meet their students' needs. You're coming in arbitrarily rearranging those numbers, disregarding the work that they have done and the student needs that they know they have. Additionally, disregarding the need for a director of buildings and grounds means that you have zero value in our physical structures, which do impact our students, whether you think they do or not. It is arbitrary. We have no time to look at the equitable distribution of those funds that you're moving around. And we do not have time to hear from our administrators how the lack of a director of buildings and grounds would affect our entire district. We have 6 schools to maintain. And you don't want anybody to be in charge of that?
Well, I think that, wait a minute, no.
No,
Well,
Chris,
I'm
this is
able
just
to wait.
not a
I'm
question
able to
back and
respond
forth,
to
just-
that
No,
because.
you don't need to
because-
respond to all of them. So let's,
Would
because
it-
we need all board members to be
I
able,
agree,
we
I
don't have
agree.
an amendment on the table. We just have the budget vote right now on the table.
Well, if they're directed, then it should be a
So-
general comment, not directed to me.
Well, but
Okay.
you brought that up right
did.
now, so Daniel.
Um,
And then I have Michelle, and then you can go.
I was just gonna acknowledge, Chris, I think you're doing us a service by bringing it up, and this is what not rubber stamping a budget looks like, is discussing it in open forum, and so I think this is appropriate. And I'm very ambivalent. I appreciate the spirit of your amendment. I wouldn't support it for the reasons that people brought up. I would say that I do support the cutting. We discussed this in the finance committee, the reduction in the board expenses related to professional and technical services specifically. I think we could authorize that amount of funds to come back in through use of fund balance in the future, but it doesn't feel appropriate to me to have it in the operating budget for the district for the year. I want to say, like, as a parent of students at Calais, like, this hits close to home and it makes me nervous. And I also am willing to watch the process and watch what unfolds in terms of a proposal from the district. And I think it's worth remembering, and it bears repeating, that the district can step in and either utilize district resources to add to counseling, to add to nursing in other areas of the schools. If the need arises, this budget's supposed to reflect need, and this is the expert judgment of the district administrators that it does meet and reflect need at these schools. And if that changes, or if their estimation of that changes, I think the trust between administration and board is such that they will come to us and tell us that, and we will correct together. Thank you.
Michelle, and then.
Yeah, I think Daniel said it well, repeating, Stephen, shared how they're looking at nursing, so that way we have coverage, and it's just about re-envisioning how we do things. That's kind of what needs to happen with what we have. And I support the budget the way it is. I do feel like it's last minute to be making a change like this. So yeah, those are my thoughts about it. I think administration has done a good job planning on how they're gonna re-envision we deliver services.
Thank you, Michelle. Elizabeth, and then Julia. And then I see you, Diane.
I appreciate what Chris has brought up. I have shared in the past that I have some concerns about the idea that when you think about percentage of children, so 1 to 500 children, there's 1 nurse to 500 children, but when you have a
Somebody's phone is buzzing, that's causing the.
Might be mine. Sorry.
Okay.
So if you have an allocation like 100, 1 to 500, and you have a school of 100 children, I do worry that when you look at percentage and you think about access to a nurse, I'm not actually saying that you need a nurse 5 days a week, 8 hours a day. But I do have some significant concerns about Calice's allocation for nursing, and as well as U32. We received a letter from one of the U32 nurses that laid things out pretty clearly, that one of the concerns is access. So being on site and being able to provide services based on the amount of visits that have come, both medical and social and emotional. So I do struggle with that a bit. I know that Calice was without a nurse for maybe a month, and there was a lot of work done by the administrative assistant, who isn't a nurse, and by the principal, who also is not a nurse. And so I agree. I think the revisioning piece has to happen. And I think it has to happen like ASAP. I also believe that there are certain services, nursing is one of them, counseling is the other, that requires somebody to be accessible. And I worry with Calice, the low accessibility to a nurse, as well as U32, the high need for a nurse, if this budget is going to meet that. I don't have a proposal. I think that the number sounds appropriate. I just really want to make sure that we're keeping tabs on how this rolls out, to ensure that those needs are being met at the smaller schools and U32, the larger school.
Elizabeth, Julia, and then Diane.
I'm not sure exactly how to say this, but I think that there's no statute of limitations on creative ideas and good solutions to complicated problems. And I appreciate, of course, the effort that went into creating a budget that we have before us. Yet I'm uncomfortable with the tone and the tenor of some of the conversation that's happening right now, and invite us all to just take some breaths and be diplomatic and tactful and kind in our speech and in our tone.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Diane.
So one of the things I heard, and I just want to clarify, is that because we did have removed last year the director of grounds, right? Didn't we have that? That was in the specifics of what we had as option C or whatever it was that we chose. Is that correct? I hadn't realized it had come back in, and so
We talked about it. We talked about it in at our meetings, and it was, you know, it was kind of a last minute thing that we did. It was not meant to be optional, but yeah, I will let you talk about it, how this came out.
So we were able to identify savings in a lot of the new hires at the administrative level that allowed for us to bring that position back, especially after we worked and met with the director of facilities some more, and all of the facilities and grounds folks here at U32, identified several reasons why that position is so important. And also, I believe in the presentations that we did this year, we did a really good job of talking to you about the needs for buildings and grounds. And right now, we service our schools between a level 2 and a level 3, which is ordinary cleaning and casual cleaning. And if this position were cut, we would be more like a level 4. And
Yeah, so-
that's below what we would want.
yeah, and I'm not suggesting it, it's just, I don't recall the conversation.
It was
of
reported
brought it.
in a full report at one
Okay,
point in time.
Okay,
yes.
so, and the reason why I bring it up is because we just talked about monitoring and if changes occur and how we are doing it. And so all I'm saying is, when there's, that to me is a dramatic change. And I'm not saying that I object to it or would have, you know, thrown a hissy fit at that point. But when it's a dramatic change to it, all the information that you provide makes perfect sense. I guess I would like it as a board member highlighted a little more.
We did highlight it. in a meeting.
Okay. I don't recall that, so I apologize, but.
Do you
I was just gonna raise a point of order. I'm a little uncomfortable with us following Robert's rules here, because I think Chris is correct that he can offer an amendment when a
He can
proposal is
offer
on
an
the table.
amendment, but he didn't ask for a second, so we were discussing we had opened it for discussion.
Just asked for a second, you said, no, we're not talking about that now.
So that's
we were
point number one. And
discussing.
point number two also was that you read the warning with the budget language, and then you asked for a motion and someone said so moved, but it's not clear to me like what specifically the motion is.
But I asked you guys,
Given the
I did ask that question. I did ask that question. I said, because we're gonna be approving that later, can I read the language of the warning and use that as a motion? I did,
Oh,
and
yeah.
you said yes. Agreed to that, to move by, just to simplify. Then when we would be looking at the warning, we wouldn't be redoing that. So could we use the language of the budget and then my intent was to open the discussion of that, but you
Just don't want our work tonight to be undone.
Oh, no.
I think there's a motion. There's a motion.
So would somebody wanna second Chris's motion?
Amendment.
Oh, but sorry, amendment to the motion.
I'll second the amendment.
Okay, so moved by Chris and second by Patrick. Any more discussion on the amendment? I will let Patrick go first because he hasn't had the opportunity to speak. Patrick?
Yeah, my question brought up earlier a little bit, but I wanted to drill a little bit deeper into the FTE allocation. So the 1 to 500 ratio for a nurse, is there a minimum for that in the recommendation?
No, there's not. And are you asking, is there, like, does it say that the minimal amount of nursing that you should provide at a school?
Yeah.
That they don't give a number for that. It's just the ratio.
Just the ratio.
And we use that to
And
build
then,
from.
and is there any discussion on partial FTEs in that?
I'm not sure I understand.
So they give you the ratio and then is there any, it's kind of a different way of asking the same question. Like they address partial positions in that ratio?
No, I mean, they just say that your FTE should go along the lines with that ratio.
Yeah.
We typically will say that like even numbers like 0.2, 0.4, 0.6 tend to be easier to put within a school because that's a 0.2 is a full day point. So we typically work from those even numbers when we're trying to determine what levels we should have. It just usually makes it easier in terms of scheduling and hiring.
Thank you.
Any more questions on the amendment?
I'm curious about learning a little bit more about the responsibilities of the groundskeeper and also any unforeseen negative consequences of reducing the board budget if that's needed in some way that we don't understand.
I think what Suzanne shared is.
So the position is the director of buildings and grounds, and he oversees the entire staff here at U32. He is included in that FTE count when we calculate what is necessary for this square footage of a building. And if we cut that position, that is problematic. And I think the place that it would be most problematic is probably allowance of leave time for staff. It really doesn't give people the ability to not be here. And I would also add that we are cutting the the project manager for the capital projects, and we intend to lean more heavily on the facilities director. And so if we cut that buildings and grounds position, he would definitely be impacted by that and have to pick up a lot of that slack. While I'm already asking him to pick up slack from the project manager position. So it would hinder plans that we've already got in place for facilities and grounds. And I would say that it would reduce the level of cleaning that we do at this building. Second part of your question, remind me what it was.
More about the board spending, but the level of cleaning is important because that impacts everybody's health. So that's a kind of a preventative health measure. It's a way to think about it, seems like. Yeah.
So does the director of buildings and grounds do the cleaning themselves?
He does some of for instance, the groundskeeping. He does a lot of the plowing.
Interior?
I can get back to you on that, but I do think that he does some fill-in as needed.
Filling in, okay.
Yeah,
Substituting for people who are out.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, but
Thanks.
also supervises the whole program, so a lot of it's the maintenance, like the furnace and making sure that the people come in and do the proper maintenance. He's the one that does all the planning for that, which is super vital, and that would fall to Chris probably, which would be problematic in the plans that we've already got in place for Chris next year.
And Chris supervises the other 5 buildings, right? So it would mean
So he
that.
does a lot of the big overall planning for the building.
Lay and then
Wait,
Ursula.
sorry, you still had your board question?
Oh,
The
oh,
board
oh,
funds.
oh, yeah.
In the board amount.
What
If
was the
there's
board
any
question?
insight that could be.
We did talk about that at the finance meeting, and we said that it could come out of fund balance. The idea was to plan ahead the amount, and I don't have it right now fresh on my mind. The amount that we are adding it doesn't decrease the spending significantly. So right now we had put that amount, and we discussed this at the finance committee, in order because a lot of people had asked us to potentially have a consultant for looking at the more comprehensive at our. Yeah, Jeannie is already covered, but if we were to extend Jeannie, or is this Jeannie's part of this number two?
That's part of planning.
That's part of the
That's part of
planning.
planning for any other consultant that you would
Consultants, yeah.
have come in and help you with anything. And one of the reasons that was increased is because that's where you've been spending at. And for the FY '25, and in meetings several times, you've brought up different places where you would want to invite a consultant in. So I never saw a reason to decrease it. I think finance talked about it a little, but it wasn't a specific dollar amount that was being asked at that time, so.
And we'll probably need more consultants as we move forward with the reconfiguration.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Well, can I just respond to that?
Yeah.
The reason I am supportive of that aspect of Chris's proposal, and I don't really care that much about the number so much as the fact that I am uncomfortable, like I have it in front of me, it's an increase from 10,000 annually budgeted to 86,900 annually budgeted. And I hear Suzanne's argument that that is what we're spending currently, but I also don't want that to be the new norm in the budget. And I think we would be more cautious with our spending if we had to explicitly authorize individual contractors in a given year with fund balance, as opposed to just having the budget available to spend. And also, I think we're in an extraordinary time right now where I think probably the superintendent search funds came out of that line item.
Yeah, it would have come out of that.
And Genie, which is sort of a finite period of time, and then potentially other consultants. So it doesn't
Okay.
feel as if it's a normal year still.
Yeah, thanks for that insight. That's helpful.
And I did bring it up at the virtual board meeting that we had. Reducing that by 50%. I think specifically at that point, I raised that question.
Like,
So I guess we might have just talked about it. I wasn't fully sure, but I would just like someone to reiterate what would be the implications monetarily in any dollar amount if said amendment is passed. Like what is, with the grounds being cut and with an increase at Callis as the amendment was said.
We don't
I'm not
have
sure
the-
if
Close to
I make
wash.
sense.
I don't think there's much
There's not.
increase.
We don't know, we need to do the numbers, we don't.
I'm just assuming.
In some areas and adding in other
Right.
areas, so the actual number would stay the same.
Right.
Oh,
Was
okay.
It's not increasing the budget number.
Ursula?
I had a question for Suzanne. If that buildings and grounds director was reduced and it would therefore affect potentially people's ability to take time off, does that become a contractual problem?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it would be contractual because they would take the time off.
It's just.
It would
people don't have
affect.
coverage for the
It's just the
building.
cleaning
I
that's-
wanted It would affect the quality of cleaning in this building. It
That's
would
where we
go
would have the
down.
effect.
And
Not
that's
that
where
we
it would
would-
go down from that level 2 to 3 to level 3 to 4. And we have not spoken to this person about it, and now we are speaking publicly about it.
Yeah.
So that's unfortunate that it hasn't been brought up to him previously.
Yeah, and it's.
Well, this is what we did last year too, when we.
It
made-
wasn't a
no, it
surprise
wasn't.
last
What,
year.
we did the same thing last year, when we had or the year before that. It was, no, I think it was last year actually, where we had the menu and we did the à la carte. And that was all discussed in public meeting, and that's when his position was actually reduced. And I think it was last year, right?
It was last year, but
Callis.
that's why we're
Yeah,
not doing
right,
à la
okay.
carte, because I will have, oh,
I wasn't entirely done, but I'm.
well, go ahead, no, go ahead, Ursula, and then Lina, and then Zach.
So I'm gonna say from a governance standpoint, the board approves an overall budget number and us asking the administration to stick to the exact allocations that they've given us today, then goes against the fact that we've said, if issues arise, we would like you to make sure that you're meeting those needs, which we have talked about multiple times during this budget, is that if situations within our schools change and there needs to be a reallocation, they can do that within the budget, and they have, and they come back to us when they have to do that in the COLT reports. And it is our responsibility to make sure that we're informing ourselves through our reports. But we as a governing body approve the overall amount, asking them to hold to specific allocations is not our jurisdiction.
But when we are examining a budget, we rely upon the representations that are made in the budget. And it would be shocking if we approved the budget based on the representations in terms of positions and the administration, and this would never happen, just reallocated, said, we're going to fire all the English teachers or anything. Just let me finish. And that is, so we have you're right, the administration has discretions to fill holes when they need to. But we also have, as a board, some policy input on where those holes should be filled, and we should exercise it.
I just want to, before we move on, I think we have Linnea going after. I really would, I'm really uncomfortable for us to keep talking about the position of buildings and grounds. I think that we lack the understanding of, we take for granted our buildings and grounds positions across our district and the amount of work that they do for us. And I just want to say that out loud, that it is absolutely not fair to single out there's no clear understanding of me which data you're using to single out this particular position among all other positions. So I'm just going to say that it's just not fair to the individual. It's not fair to the principal of that school. It's not fair because we haven't had those conversations. I just want to put that out there as a board to be thoughtful about that. Linnea?
Well, first, I'd just like to suggest that everybody takes a deep breath.
Yeah.
And I'm not joking. I actually want to see everybody take a deep breath. And then I just kind of like to reiterate the importance of the groundskeeper. And I understand we don't need to start talking about this again, but this may not seem like a super huge deal, but as a student athlete, I play field hockey, and for that sport, the grass needs to be cut very short, and in previous years it has not been. And it's just very important to that sport in specific, and then also all other grass sports that the grass be cut, which maybe I'm not completely understanding, but I just wanted to put that out there. It is important for many, many student athletes that the grass is maintained and painted and it's done well.
Thank you. Yes. Zach?
I wanted to quickly follow up on something that Suzanne said and then make another comment. It's just on the matter of sort of the impact that this kind of thing has on staff. Last year, we hadn't made final decisions on what level of cuts we were going to go to, but there were things published in advance saying, people knew these were the possibilities. They didn't know which possibility we were going to choose, but they knew which ones were on the table. I also want to reflect on something, sort of following up on this idea that these are positions that are oftentimes maybe not recognized for their full value. Right after, shortly after I graduated from college, I was doing disaster response work. I ended up in New Jersey, working for the Red Cross. And one of the things we would do is survey schools for shelters. And typically, if you're unlucky, they give you the principal, but usually they're lucky and they give you the custodian. So we spent a bunch of time following custodians around high schools. It was really eye-opening to see how these guys, regulated the emotional temperature of these buildings. They were really, really important to the social life of these schools. And I think it wasn't always appreciated, but it was just obvious walking through the hall, sort of what impact they had on what was going on between classes. And so I don't want us to devalue those possessions.
So, and I agree with you that the custodians.
Wait.
Okay, sorry.
So Elizabeth has had her hand up for a little while, and Lei also wanted to talk, so.
I'm kind of going in a different direction. I hope that's okay. One of the questions that keeps going through my head, and maybe Stephen, you can answer it, and if not, it's okay. But just generally, when we talk about reallocating or adding funds to school when a need arises.
I love that. That's my favorite thing she does.
Wait,
I was like, am I, is that me?
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. It came on my earbud.
It could have been a lot
Okay.
worse.
So when a need arises, I'm curious about what triggers that. So for example, is it an increase in enrollment? Probably. Is it an increase in special needs or special ed services? Probably. Is it an increase in behavioral challenges? Possibly. If you could give just an example, and it can be a very general example of when something like that had to happen, when you had to change and add funds to a school.
Yeah, so just remember that this is my first budget, so I haven't been in that full position yet. But we did have a situation with kindergarten where, and I'm sorry, I think it was Berlin, but I may be completely wrong on that, where we had more students than we expected. And so we did add a kindergarten teacher. And as I said before, the way that we first look at that is how do we cover that within the general funds? Because usually there are ways for us to do that, given how positions are filled. And then from there, we would come to the board and ask for fund balance. And I believe, and I don't know how long ago, which Alicia we had to fill a position there many years ago through fund balance. Yeah. Yeah, and so that's where we would come and ask those.
Yeah.
Those, if we saw those kinds of needs.
That helps. Thank you. I think the main reason I'm asking is because when I think about things like nursing, we can try to predict what's going to happen. Even with counseling, we have a mental health crisis in our state, across the United States. And so for me, I'm going to just say it again. I am concerned about the levels at some of the schools. But I am taking the word of the administration that if needs arise, whether it be mental health, enrollment, special education needs, that there would be a serious look at that and consideration from a fiscal standpoint. And it sounds like that. So thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Amelia, and
I
then
just want to say that I appreciate the enthusiasm and your philosophical and values-based standpoint. And I think that we all, by consensus, care about expanding these programs. And I wonder if we pass the budget as it is now, that we can hold on to the hope and the trust that we have the plan to expand the programs in the way that you're proposing without having to take away from the groundskeeper and the custodians. And we have state mandated wellness policy that we're going to be working on. So we can work with the administration and see what procedures do they have in place to monitor already? Where do we need to expand? How does that coincide with policies that we're going to be developing to improve any areas that might need improvement with the coverage that we have, which meets the standards for nursing and counseling.
And I would just add that also Becca that was sharing with us today, we got the grant of community schools, and that also would allow us to explore one of the things that they're looking at is potentially health, a health clinic at the U32 level. So that would also, it would allow the team to look more comprehensive, similar to what Stephen was saying about collecting the data in March and working more comprehensive with our district. But are there any other questions on the amendment? So that we can vote on the amendment.
It's less of a question, it's more of a comment. I will also kind of echo what Amelia said, is that I think that it's great that we have been able to, and Chris has been able to do what his job is as a representative from his town and represent his constituents and do that in a civil way. And I just like to reiterate that it's great that we have been able to put this on our minds and put this on the minds of our voters potentially later. Think about this coming up next year. If we see something that doesn't work this year, we can maybe change it next year. And I think that we've been able to develop that really nicely. And I'd just like to thank the whole board for that.
Thank you.
Can we have the amendment repeated?
Yeah, before we
No,
vote.
Yeah.
I can't see. I'm sorry.
Can somebody read it back?
It's a little long,
you know, a little detailed.
Lisa is taking minutes from the video, so I don't have the amendment as you discussed it. I would have to go back on the,
I have the numbers.
yeah.
I can read it.
Yeah, that's what you
Okay,
did
just the
before.
numbers? Okay, so I move that we reallocate.
Can you speak right into the
Yes,
microphone?
I move that we reallocate part of the budget so that the nursing at Callis was increased by 0.3 to 0.5, and that the library media was increased by 0.3, so it would be 0.6. And at Doty, that the media would be increased by 0.3, so it would be 0.7. At Rumney, that the nursing would be increased by 0.2, so it'd be 0.8, and that the library media at Rumney would be increased by 0.4, so it would be 0.8. I propose that we offset those increases by reducing the board, and point out the professional services budget by $38,450, and that we eliminate the director of grounds at U32. So moved again.
So that was the motion. So if you would vote aye on this, you would be voting in favor of the motion as a whole. You can't like take pieces out of
read
it.
my mind.
You would be voting on that motion as a whole.
Right.
Okay. So all of those in favor of the motion as it is, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, so I believe we have two ayes. All those not in favor of the motion, please signify by saying nay.
Nay.
Okay, I think the nays have it.
Really?
Okay, so now we're back to the motion that we had on the table before. So do I need to read the warning language again? Should I? I'm saying yes. I'm saying yes. Yes, please. I don't have my glasses.
And does it match up with one of these pages? Do some of the figures match up with one of these?
Numbers are not.
So they do match up in a couple of spots.
Yeah.
I'll try to do this. So just Article.
Just Article 6.
Okay,
Yeah.
so this is just Article 6 of the warning. So shall the voters of the Washington Central Unified Union School District approve the school board to expend $43,225,002, which is the amount the school board has determined to be necessary for the ensuing fiscal year. It is estimated that this proposed budget, if approved, will result in education spending of $15,272 per equalized pupil. This projected spending per equalized pupil is 6.2% higher than spending for the current fiscal year or current year.
And that's all on page 65 and 66.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, and that was moved by Julia and second by Amelia.
Amelia, correct.
So, all right, any other questions, or can we move to the vote? Okay, all those in favor of the motion as read by Stephen, moved by Julia, second by Amelia, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I don't hear anybody. Any abstentions? I don't hear anybody. The motion carries and we have a budget number. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you from
Thank you.
administration. I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Okay,
And
there's
then,
more.
yeah, hold on a minute. So we have approved the budget and now we're gonna approve the warning. Everybody has the warning in the packet. And there are a couple of things that I just wanna go over, or do you wanna go over them?
If you want.
Yeah,
Since
go
you don't have glasses.
Yeah, you go.
Okay.
The Article 1 is the only thing.
Okay, so I just want to point out within the warning that Article 1, indicates that we would elect a clerk for a term of 1 year or 3 years in the event that they also pass Article 9. That's the same true as Article 2 for the treasurer position. And then Article 9 is asking the voters, shall the district clerk and treasurer be expended to 3-year terms? So we vetted this with our attorney to make sure that this language would work. And that was his suggestion for Article 1 and 2. We had not known if we could do that. And then the Article 6 in your packet does not have those numbers filled in that we just went over. And so that's what the numbers in Article 6 are, what you just voted on. Okay.
And before you leave, we would want you to sign the warning, so you don't have to make a trip to central office to sign the warning. So could I have a motion, if you guys have had a chance to review the warning, do I have a motion to approve the warning as presented? Ursula is, okay, so Ursula and second by Diane. Is that Diane, were you talking? Yes. So let me just, warning. Any questions? Yeah.
Quick technical correction. At the very top, it says, it says to vote on Articles 1 through 8. That should be amended to 1 through 9.
Wow,
Oh.
good catch. Yeah.
Do we have it here? No,
Is the date?
Oh, wait, no, this has happened to us before. No. So you can sign it. It's a minor, you can sign the page. It's just print the other page if you trust. Yeah, otherwise.
You don't have the numbers.
We will make the correction on this as you sign. We will reprint it with that correction.
With the 9.
And your signatures.
Yeah, no,
Yes, you're right.
okay.
I remember that.
Because this happened. Oh, and I lost my, oh, you have a right one. Here.
Yes.
Go ahead, Ursula.
At a previous meeting,
Thank you, Seth.
at a previous meeting, it had been raised to talk about the compensation for the clerk position. And we had asked for information back, and I don't know if we have information.
Very limited information, but the clerk's salary had been increased recently. And so she did say that it's probably not in the best interest at this moment to increase it. But it's certainly something to keep on our agenda for the future. But
She looked at the hours.
Yeah, and it had been increased recently as well.
Okay. So all of those in favor of the warning as moved by Ursula and second by Diane, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Did you say as corrected?
The what?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
as corrected. Yeah.
It's approved.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, the motion carries. Right.
Thank you.
Oh, great, thank you. And then I will just pass it and start signing. There's a spot with your name and, we made the corrections to the name, hopefully. Make it sure. Okay. Budget, budget communication. So the next part of the budget communication is that we're working on a trifold now that we have the information. We already have all of the pieces of the report, and now we have looking at Suzanne too, because now we'll be working with Ben in creating the trifold to go to all of our voters. And our next meeting is to be our informational meeting for that the board will own the budget now, and we would be informing the community about the budget.
Well, in the past, the board has put together a video.
Yeah, and well, we talked about that last time, so we would put together that video, which is usually the recording of that next meeting. And we talked about different ways to make sure that we could go to our communities, so maybe splitting up like we did last time, that the last budget vote, so that we would split up into groups so that we can be at each individual school and spreading, sharing the information so that the voters can make an informed decision on the budget. Yeah. Daniel, you had your hand up.
Yeah, 2 suggestions.
Yeah.
One is that the trifold emphasized the lack of absentee ballots this year, and the fact that everyone will need to be voting for this in person. We don't want to see diminished voter participation because of that. And the other was a little bit more experimental and speculative. I was wondering what we thought about it's in the spirit of, we've got a little bit of energy in terms of collaboration with the U32 student body, and I don't know if we wanted to think about a way of like co-hosting a budget forum
Yeah,
with
that's great.
student
Yeah.
government here or something like that.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I don't know. I'm
Yeah,
sure
yeah,
that's a headache logistically, but it would be a lot of fun.
We can give it a try, and they're working with UP for learning. Go ahead,
I was
Lena.
just gonna say, Lay and I are communicating, well, mostly Lay has been communicating with the student council about just like keeping them updated on what's going on at these meetings. And I'm sure that we could definitely set something like that.
So I did, earlier today, I talked to one of the representatives that were present in our meeting, last meeting, Elise O'Brien of East Montpelier. And we talked about doing that and talking about how we can integrate this kind of a budget forum for our students, as we had about, I think it was like 40 students show up to the meeting that was the questionnaire from the student council prior to last meeting. So we're working on that and trying to get trying to get the starting steps for that. I'm not sure if that makes sense, but
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. And Elise also said that she would try to share with the students to make sure that all the kids that are turning 18 also vote. So she's also working on that.
Excellent.
Yeah. Okay. That's what we have for communication right now, and the steering committee will get to talk about this again. Oh, sorry, Zach. Go
Just
ahead.
one quick thing, and make sure that we're all on the same page. From Daniel's comment about the absentee ballots. Make sure that people know that you can still vote by absentee ballot. You just have to request it.
Yeah,
You
request
don't-
the,
yeah,
yeah, and that's what I wrote
It's
here,
not that people
request.
have to go vote in person,
Yeah.
that it's not going to be automatically mailed to them. So I think that caused, I know for us, in East Montpelier at least, that caused a great deal of consternation on Front Porch Forum. And I think to make sure people know that, if they ask, yes, all you need to do is call your town clerk and they can mail you a ballot. And if there's some reason that a ballot can't be mailed to you, they can actually send a couple of justices of the peace to your house with the ballot. And so there are other ways of doing it for people who can't get to the polls.
Patrick?
I was wondering if there's a strategy for Front Porch Forum that we're going to be working on, or other social media outlets for selling the budget and making sure that we get the most support possible.
Yeah, we have, you're talking about other
Yeah.
social media?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we have an Instagram account and a Facebook account, and Melissa posts there often. We post all of our agendas, so all of that gets posted, and especially the Facebook account seems to be the one that most people look at.
Yeah, I guess
But any other suggestions?
Yeah, more than just posting the agendas, but like a concerted effort of outlining what's in the budget in a
Yes.
simple way, and in a way it's bullet points and something that people can quickly digest and then tell their neighbors about. Because I think getting the information out where folks can share it within their own networks, whether they're virtual or real. I think it's going to be really important for us to get the community support for a budget.
Yeah, and Keely, Elizabeth, and myself will be working on, sort of update of this meeting, which would include a simple way of describing the budget, plus, go
Yeah.
ahead.
I was going to put together a really
Really
short, like lay terms
Great.
kind of video as well about it, just so that we have, a couple of different ways to get it out there, because print's not everything, right?
Yeah.
So and I'm not talking about a 10-minute video, that 2 to 3 minute max, that just gives people a good overview of our process and some of the high points.
Excellent.
Especially since we know that warning confuses people.
Oh,
We know
yes.
we had to change
Yes.
the language back by the
Yes.
law,
Yeah.
but we know that can be very confusing. So having it really, but what does this mean for you? This is what it means for you.
Yeah.
And I think we can do the meeting update like we usually. I think we can do the meeting update like we usually do, and then we could also work on maybe consolidating the trifold down to the various
Mhm,
minimum
mhm.
points that then
will go out through the same channel that the meeting
Yeah.
updates do, you know, at kind of regular intervals.
Especially
Yeah, the
with those
trifle,
links
the,
on
the
income
trifle, Suzanne, Stephen, and you guys can be part of that, Suzanne, Stephen, Ben, Miller, and myself, and we run it by you guys after, because it's just like, there's like a format and includes sort of the logistics of being able to have a common, I don't know, like a common wording and theme through all of the documents. So he is the writer on that part, and we feed him what we want to say, and his graphic designer works on it for us.
Elizabeth, I just offered up our services. and I'm
Yeah,
realizing
no,
that now
no,
that I
that's
do
fine.
this. Okay.
No, that's fine. And I was even thinking, to your point, kind of like just a graphic that can go up onto Instagram or Facebook that just has like the key points, the things that people really, similar to the trifold, but even condensed more to somebody who just wants to pop on, take a look at it and try to grasp what all of it means, which, you know, is super simple to do, but we'll figure it out.
Okay, sounds great. Yeah. Update from the configuration committee. I'm gonna try to not rush us, but try to get us through this, because it's almost 9 o'clock and you guys have been sitting for a while. I want to respect your time. The configuration committee met this afternoon at 5 p.m. I think we had a productive meeting. We mostly, the agenda was also emailed to all board members so that you could see what that agenda was. We went through our common understanding of what our strategic plan are, our core beliefs are, the criteria document, the equity definition that we use as a district, and outlining, you know, making some changes to that. We looked at the timeline, and the next step is to send a doodle poll to try to get to that particular date that we can all continue to meet. There's no big decisions were made today, so just want to report on the work has started, and the committee was all here, and we'll continue to report. Legislative breakfast, we're having a legislative breakfast on February 11th. You have a saved, but you should have all received the calendar invite about a month ago or more. So just say it's going to be at Berlin. It seems to be the most central place, and they take care of hosting us and cooking for us. So we will have it there. As we get a little bit closer, we can talk about some questions. But again, it's an open forum like the last time, and you can ask. So there's no wrong questions. You can ask more questions, but we want to make sure that we have some priorities to make sure that we share with them. We're going to move into the finance committee. In the finance committee, there was just a short report on the in the EV charger, just so that it's not done. We sent it to the policy committee so that the policy committee can start developing a policy across the district on what we're doing. There's a small report on page 32. If there's any questions, you have 1 second. Okay. No questions, because I want to do policy. We haven't. Oh, Patrick.
Yeah, sorry. I've used that charger, full disclosure. It's
Okay.
free.
It's okay.
It's free. Why? Can we charge for it?
What? Okay, go ahead. So I can answer that question fairly quickly. We can charge for it, but there is a cost of us switching over the system that we are getting the quotes for.
Okay.
So that the finance committee knows what that is.
Yeah, and a policy, so it's district-wide. Okay.
So Patrick, you can make
We're-
donations.
No charge. Just put a little coffee here.
Yes, yeah.
Oh, go to work.
Yeah.
So,
Policy committee, policy chair, second reading on
We had a second
F20.
reading, and here's the red line for that. Yeah, sorry. The red line wasn't included.
Just need to move everything. No, nobody would.
So pretty straightforward. Ran this by Suzanne, and she gave us her comments on what we need or don't need. And we took those into consideration in our redlining and minor modification. So the second reading, we asking for approval. So Suzanne knows what to do.
Okay, we're at, could I have a motion?
Oh, so moved.
Thank you, Patrick. Second by sorry. Okay, second by Keely. Any questions for the policy committee? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion carries. Negotiations committee, Diane?
Yeah, so this is just simply as part of our collective bargaining agreement that we made a year and a half ago. We're in the second year of the bargaining unit. We are to work on a matrix to come up, work together with the teachers around a matrix suggestion that would then come to the board. The idea is to get that work done now, because next year we enter into negotiations. So the tricky part right now is finding a common date to come together to make the plan for the rest of the meetings. So that's where we're at.
Any questions for Diane? Patrick?
At risk of making it more complicated, could I join your committee?
So we had, so that's a wider question. Negotiations, there is space for it. We, at part of the matrix review is that there's to be 2 union members and 2 committee members. And we last year had designated Chris and myself. So that's a question I put out there. I mean, there's space on the negotiations committee. I'm just not sure where this.
So Patrick, we would be reorganizing right now in March.
Okay.
So if you wanted
hold
to
mine.
join the negotiations committee, that would be one. Don't go too quickly because I was gonna point you to the, just wait, just wait. And and then you can decide how many committees you need to be. But you can take as many as you want.
Thank you.
But we will be reorganizing in March, and I think right now it's important that this process continues. So, and you can definitely join them, but for that particular work, there will be just 2 people of that negotiations committee.
Understood. Thank you.
Okay. So affirm appointments to the transportation committee. I had some suggestions.
I heard
was gonna
Patrick.
suggest that Patrick and Daniel.
You're in every committee.
But I'm just talking about people that had expressed interest before. So 3 people is what we've been looking for. In the past, this committee has just really done the buses part. And Michelle, you were the other one that I
Yeah, I was
had
gonna
in mind.
nominate Michelle.
Yeah, so, but
Yeah, this is a request of administration. But we're not going to be having meetings every month, but we do think that this is a necessary part of our oversight, that we should be doing at least twice a
Quarterly,
year.
right.
And then if we have a negotiations year, there might be more meetings.
And we are gonna do this again when we reorganize, but there's a potential need because of what we've been talking about for that to be needed sooner. So we wanted to, in the meantime, at least between now and March, wanted to appoint 3 people to that committee, or 2. So I was thinking of you, Patrick, Michelle, and any other volunteer. Daniel is he's nominated
willing to, but I
Michelle.
would also
She's
like to
nominated Michelle.
Thanks, Daniel.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no problem.
Michaela? Looking down, it's just like, it's just like, yeah, I'm just teasing you. I think for right now, we're fine like that. Let's do Patrick and Daniel for right now. And, oh, sorry, sorry, I insist, Michelle and Patrick.
Can I ask who from administration would be present in those meetings?
And me.
Yeah.
Before you decide.
Yeah.
Well, no, yeah, I'm just curious because yeah.
Yeah, and in the past few years, what we've done is that it comes to the finance committee. That's how we've done part of it, because it's usually, so you would still be seeing it. So could I have a motion to have Michelle and Patrick? Ursula? Okay, Michelle and Patrick appointed to the transportation committee, second by Natasha. Thank you, Natasha. Okay, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion carries. We have no, you are not missing anything. There's no approved teachers or resignations right now. Consent agenda, looking for a motion to approve our minutes of January 8th.
I move we approve the minutes of January 8th.
Thank you, Seth. Second by Keely. Okay. So, second, Keely. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions? You guys had it? Okay. Moving right on to approving the board orders. Where's the folder? Okay, Patrick, go for it.
Okay. I've read through the dates as well. Just the numbers.
You do
The total and the date.
Okay, we have a check warrant general 12/19/2024-1 to January 22nd, 2025. The number is $1,585,533.90. We have a check warrant capital 12/19/2024 to 1/22/2025 for $15,955.66. We have a check warrant general 11/21/2024 to 12/17/2024, $10,566.82. And the total is $801,838.75.
That's
No.
not
Doesn't seem
right.
right.
Yeah,
No.
the first one was $1 million.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're missing a math is
The
not
total
good.
should be in the first page.
Hold on, I've got my calculator up.
Did you do that math in your head?
Probably wouldn't come out right if you done it.
Suzanne, do you have the-
Survey.
It's
No,
one
it's-
million six hundred and 12,056.38.
One more
Those
time?
three add up to $1,612,056.38.
Okay,
Can you repeat that again? Sorry.
yep, the total is $1,612,000. I missed one.
Okay. So moved by Patrick, second by Keely. Okay, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion carries.
Just a note on those, there were 4 places to sign and it looked like
Oh,
there
I
were
only
not
saw
a lot of
3.
signatures on some of them.
Oh, we better send that back
There's four
around.
pa- Yeah, sorry, I said that there was
I
just
wouldn't
one
have had
post. I
any of
didn't
them
had
when you
enough
first looked and
posted,
told me
so
there were
just
4
check
places.
for
Yeah, I thought
post
there were
for
Still
signature. Oh, yeah, it's just, yeah. Okay,
But do we have to sign it in 4? We only signed it in 3.
Yeah.
Can we
Okay.
send it back around? and
Yeah.
just-
yeah, send it back around. Good,
Did
yeah.
you already-
It's
send it back.
$1,612,056, so there's a zero.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next item before we can move into public comments and board reflection is the future agenda items. We're gonna go by our work plan. We talked about board, we need to send the board evaluation in February so that it can be done before March. Advocating as a board, we're having our legislative breakfast. This is what we schedule to start that. And superintendent evaluation, we did that already, so that needs to come. It just didn't come out of that. Not did already, but we already have a plan and he's presented goals. Board reflection,
Well,
Question.
yes.
Question, 2 questions. First of all, advocating as a board, you said we'll start that with our legislative breakfast.
Yeah.
Are we advocating individually at the legislative breakfast? Are we are there talking points that you want us to advocate as a board at the legislative, like, that's a very broad.
Oh, we just
statement.
talked about it when we were talking about the legislative breakfast just a minute ago. I just said that, it would be great if we could come out as a board, we could prioritize some things that we want to talk to our legislators when they are. It's just us as a board meeting with our
So when are
our
we gonna
team.
prioritize what we're?
Yeah, so that's what it
We'll have a
says.
board meeting.
We will have a board
between
meeting
now and
between
then.
those. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. and then that there were no wrong questions, that we also, as individual board members, we could ask any question to our legislators. Part of having this legislative breakfast is taking action on what the board has said that we wanna, that's just one step. It doesn't mean that board advocating as a board goes away from the agenda. It's just one step moving forward to what was requested.
Yeah, I mean, I just asked because I was the person who said, can we advocate separately from VSBA? Because VSBA has been putting out, I think, statements that are not necessarily indicative of how we claim we feel as a board. So I just was curious about what that messaging was.
So is it going to be on the agenda for the next meeting?
Yeah, it's right. That's why it's a future agenda.
Lee has
I mean,
something,
it's
but
been a
then
future
I
agenda a
also.
couple times, that's what I was wondering.
Lee.
The other question I had is, during the configuration meeting in the timeline, it talks about a community school team. And I'm wondering what that was, who is on it, and how, like who's deciding what the makeup of that is.
So we don't have a team yet. That was part of organizing the work. That was sort of what we heard. We were organizing the team. What has been done is applying for that, for that grant that Becca applied, but we don't have a team. That grant would allocate a coordinator for, that's just how the grant works. We allocate a coordinator for us to start doing the work, and then once they have an idea of what they want, there would be a committee, and it all depends on sort of what area. So it will refer. I'm not an expert at that, so Becca will be working on that
We haven't, that's a placeholder for putting that together.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the team is staff and administration, which confused me before too. It's
Yes.
not part of, it's not.
It's
people
not
who-
part of the
I mean,
configuration
I'm
committee.
just curious, because I've been talking about community schools for 2 years and offering to bring forward information about community schools for 2 years, and helped open a community school in Baltimore, and like have been trained on community schools. And so
I hear you
would
volunteering.
love, yes,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
would, but if it's staff and administration, I'm not.
It's just we're not there yet.
You're
We're
a
not.
parent and board member and all of those wonderful things as well. And so, yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
we'll
Oh,
get
good,
there.
that's good news. Okay.
Yeah, this was a placeholder. There was no intention of denying people access to it. We haven't started it yet. So
Yeah,
that's.
It's just a priority, and I think there's several of us that have been bringing community schools to the table and participated on that.
I hear the volunteering.
Yeah. So,
Lee has his hand up.
yeah. Okay.
Lee has his hand
So
up.
public
Or
comment.
Lee.
Lee,
Pardon me,
Lee,
sorry.
Lee,
No,
your
no,
turn.
no problem. Could you remind me of that date of that legislative?
February, it should be on your invites, but we'll make sure that it's on your invite too.
11th.
It's on
11th.
on
Okay, I
February
misheard.
11th at
Okay, no,
7:30
cool.
to 9, I think we said, or 7:30.
7:30, 8:30. is what the
8:30, yeah,
calendar
because
says.
then finance committee is right after.
Okay, I misheard the date.
Yeah, Berlin.
So one of the things though that I would like to add as advocating as a board is the national context. I'm very concerned at the DEI cuts that are occurring and the pressure that's occurring. And I think that I worry about what's the inside pressure on education that will be coming down. And so I think we just need to keep that on the forefront because things are changing fast and frenzied. So I don't want to end up behind the 8 ball when we've identified that as a strong priority of what we're doing.
Yeah.
We are, along
we're,
with the professional, the Vermont Superintendents Association, Vermont Principal Association, the VSBA. We're monitoring that at that level as well. We do need to respond to some of this.
Public comment?
Oh,
yeah.
I just want to, second kind of what Elizabeth said earlier, just I'm supportive of this budget. Oh.
Yeah.
I have to sit back down. I'm supportive of this budget overall, but I do have concerns about nursing. So I just wanted to like flag that continued concern, and just I'm looking forward to having continued communication and updates about that. And I also do have a residual concern about the tech integration. And would just like more information as it unfolds about that, just because it has been brought up that in particular is present in one of the elementary schools and not the others, and which is a little bit different than what we heard today. So I'd just like some more details at some point on that, but,
Yeah.
thank you.
Reflection, this was just brought up a couple of, a minute or so ago slightly, but I wanted to just give some air to the fact that there are a lot of changes that are happening from the federal level right now. And I know specifically there are students that use they, them pronouns that are feeling particularly attacked at the moment. And I wanted to reiterate that this board and this district has an education philosophy that includes providing an inclusive environment that for folks that with a lot of different identities and a lot of different backgrounds, and that includes trans people and people that don't fit into traditional binary sexes. And I appreciate being a part of this community and being a part of this board and sending my children to this district at a time like this, specifically because we have a philosophy that sees them for who they are.
Thank you, Patrick. Any other reflections before I open it to community members? Okay. Public comments, please raise your hand. Go ahead, Hannah. Oh yeah, the mic, please. Spencer, the mic for Hannah. Sorry, we were going long, Spencer. We're putting you to sleep.
Thank you. I just wanted to say thank you to Chris for suggesting his amendment. I think I understand the protocol went the way it did, and I just want to say that I still have deep concerns about that. I'm hopeful with the community schools model that that may alleviate some of that. I have concerns about liability too. I didn't hear that talked about. I mean, of course, my primary concern is safety, especially after hearing about, and I know the film, you know, Just Getting By. Our nurses fill a lot of gaps when it comes to the issues that are addressed in that film. The other thing with the nursing requirement is I was reading the Vermont Code, and I think there's a difference between the spirit of the law and the letter of the law. So the letter of the law is that there need them 500 to 1, you know, 1 nurse for 500 students. If you read through the code, the spirit of the law is the role that the nurse provides at school. And that's what we're talking about. So 0.2 for Calais, which probably has a greater socioeconomic need, just going by the numbers is not really aligning with the spirit of the law. Again, I think it's been addressed as best it could. And I appreciate your answer to my question. My last comment is a plea. If you want community engagement, I really think you need to refrain from calling people / person who show up to the meeting in person as the vocal minority. I've heard that before, and it's insulting. I have 3 children at home. They're 2 and 8 and 10, and I'm here, and it's 9:15. And I really don't appreciate feeling like I'm a squeaky wheel, and it's just the squeaky wheel. That's really insulting. And you don't see the 20 people I'm texting with updates who can't be here and who agree with me and who have peppering me with questions all night long and asking for clarification and asking me to say something and ask questions. So there are so many ways that you get community engagement. I think it's also rather insidious to refer to a non-vocal majority and say that they're whatever this invisible non-vocal majority thinks is more valid than my point of view. It's disenfranchising, and especially after the talks that the board has had over the last 2 years, especially after Mr. Olkowski, Brian Olkowski left, of increasing transparency and community engagement. I think we would need to be really careful about how you talk about comment. And the same goes for when, my representative from Middlesex, Chris, makes an amendment. We need to be careful about the really intense and emotional reactions to what he says. And I appreciate the high schoolers who tell us to take a deep breath. But, and I wrote an editorial, and I'm sorry I wrote a letter to the editor of the Times-Argus 2 years ago, talking about the hypocrisy of the board that is just the nature of a huge board and the transition and the merger. But if you want the board to approve budgets, then you need to allow an engaged discussion. It can't, if you want if you don't want somebody to bring up an amendment, whether it's the last minute or not, then remove the requirement for the board's approval. So that's my soapbox. I really appreciate the work. I really appreciate the tone. I think it's improved. Thank you for being here. Thank you for the budget. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Hannah. Becca?
Hey, everyone. I'm curious about the legislative breakfast, and I know you said it was gonna be discussed at the next meeting, but I'm just curious if the board will be speaking sort of on behalf of their constituents at that to legislators, and if so, if there'll be a chance for constituents to weigh in on those positions, or if it's sort of like the board is speaking as individual members. I'm curious about that, and I would love some clarification about how that looks. If you're going to be
Becca, I'm just going to say it quickly here. We don't usually respond to public comments, but this is a question that is for planning. In the past, we just done this once. We started this tradition last year. In the past, we used to do invite them to our board meeting or a separate, usually around this time, and always snowed in. We didn't get enough people, and so last year we moved it to a legislative breakfast, and it was just the board members. Early in the morning, having a more in-depth and casual conversation with our legislators. I would encourage you to reach out to, you're in Middlesex, reach out to Chris and so we would be having that meeting. At our next meeting, discussing priorities. You can also obviously come to that meeting. We don't have, I'll be lying to you if I don't have a specific plan right now. In the future, we could think about doing a survey as a board or something like that. I think there's a lot of things that are coming right now pretty quickly at us from the state that we need to prioritize and make sure that we understand better the details. So we would be of course, speaking for our constituency. That's just what I'm assuming that we would all be doing.
I have concerns about that because the board wasn't elected to be lobbyists for us, and so something about that doesn't feel quite transparent. It would be one thing if folks were speaking in their sort of personal capacities, or if it was a opportunity to hear from legislators about what their priorities were, but
that's what they do. Yeah, that's what they do. So they share their priorities and we share with them what our concerns are. So it's not necessarily lobbying them, but there's a lot of questions that we have. So they want to be informed by the questions that we have as as school board members, right? As school board members, you do elect us to, pass the budget and be the stewards of the budget and the stewards of best outcome for kids. So we want to make sure that we understand the context in the state that we are operating right now. It would be just questions about what is happening. So we have a better idea as a board of what we would be facing in the future, right? So I wouldn't want to call us lobbyists either, but we would want to understand and tell them our priorities. Advocates for our community, right? Ursula?
I was just going to talk on last year, it obviously centered around the budget a lot because there were so many changes happening. So we were able to hear what was going on in the legislature and then talk about what we were seeing as a board. Flora said, it wasn't lobbying.
No,
it was conversations for understanding.
Yeah. Okay, I don't see any other hands up, and so I will look for a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Thank you, Daniel. Second by Chris. Okay, thank you, everybody.